OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
All right, you're very welcome along. It is Monday morning. We are definitely bright-eyed and bushy-tailed after that weekend. Shane is here.
Morning, how are things?
Colm is here.
Oh yeah, it's got a great movie recommendation for the weekend called Big Night. Came out in 1996, Stanley Tucci, based in the 1950s about an Italian restaurant in New York. Exceptional. Total cult hit, 97% Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
And at that time it was a do-it-yourself attitude in Hollywood if you weren't making it. So you had the lads behind Good Will Hunting, the lads behind Swingers, and then Stanley Tucci was like, I'm not getting any roles that I want here, so I'm going to do my own thing. So he co-wrote and co-directed the film.
Okay, good.
Very
Big
good.
Night.
Big Night.
Are you in a Stanley Tucci obsession at the moment?
No, why? Who else? What else?
Just curious. He's your current spirit animal, is he?
Oh no! I just got this recommendation out of the blue.
Right.
I think he's coming to Dublin for the Docky Book Festival.
There's something. He's in the ether at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah. Tom Hanks is coming over as well.
God, he was striking back
Tom
then.
Hanks is coming to the Docky Book Festival.
yeah.
Wow, McWilliams. That's
Yeah, I
not
saw
bad.
that, yeah. Actually, I was thinking of you when I saw that news.
Oh, I was absolutely buzzing.
But
Are you going to...
I'm going to try my best to get there. 100%.
Hang on. I totally missed that. Hannon was in the green room at the late.
Oh, I
we
was.
set it up on Friday morning.
Was drinking
Let's review it on Monday morning.
Drinking my 7-Up on Friday evening. The younger sister was performing on the late on Friday night, so I was nervous sitting in the crowd. Into the green room afterwards for a couple of...
All the talented Hannons and Shane.
That's it. Very good. Got a couple of comments like that on Twitter as well.
Hey.
It was a lot of fun. The Irish women's team from 1973 were there as well in the green room, chilling out, relaxing. Philly McMahon was in the green room as well. They had They're recording a piece for next week's show. But yeah, very proud Big Brother after Rachel May Hannon, Spotify. Listen to her song right now, The Boys. Just there's the plug.
And how did it go?
It was really good.
Yeah?
Went really, really well. My other sister's boyfriend is in the band as well, David Joyce, so it's as a guitarist. So real family affair, Jared, has to be said, in the Late Late Show. Threw in the CV, of course. That was the joke that everyone was wanting to pass across.
Very good.
But the job that no one wants.
Who's getting that job? We don't know.
No one knows.
Paddy Keelty, according to the front of the papers today and all weekend.
Would you do it?
No, you're joking me. Would you like every week for somebody to pour open your eyeballs and slit it with a razor blade?
That doesn't sound too fun.
I mean,
I don't know if you'd have the temperament for it.
I don't know. You can never go on social media again. You can never go on the streets again.
No, I just don't think you'd enjoy it.
Oh, I definitely
I think
wouldn't.
week 4 you'd be doing your kind of exasperated exhale.
You're asking would one do it as opposed
No,
to...
I was asking you personally.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you going to be my agent? I mean, for the money, you do it, right? You'd have to say yeah.
Yeah.
What about your life? What about the sacrifice?
I mean, you don't have to do anything else, do you?
Anyway, we've loads coming up.
Too much.
Yeah.
Right. Performance rankings are imminent. Daniel Harris going to join us about Man United.
Yeah.
Man United. What is going on?
I too, though. Probably with that as well.
Alan Quinlan at 8:20. It is 3 out of 4 in the URC. We're going to win the World Cup, basically, right? That's what's going to happen here. Sports News at 8:45. Sarah Donovan talking hurling at 8:50. Anthony Moyles at 9:10. And some of the best from the Sunday pay-per-view. It was Conor McKeown and Gavin Cooney in with Joe. But at 7:34, we may as well get straight into it. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Time for the Gillette Labs performance rankings.
That wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Starting in the red, lads, the usual. I don't know about you, but the Sunday 7 p.m. kickoffs threw me off kilter a little bit last night.
Absolutely hated it. I only realised it last Thursday in the office.
Yeah.
And it was a total instinctive reaction in the office. I just let out a few expletives. I couldn't believe it. Because that is a key time for the three of us. We're planning the show at that time.
It's true.
And then this thing happens. And you were saying last night, it's because of the bank holiday. But sure, it's bank holiday. You can do it at any time. There was no 2 o'clock game yesterday.
Why was something happening in the UK at the weekend?
Why was there no 2 o'clock game? Then made Newcastle Arsenal the 4:30 one. No, there was only 2 games yesterday. One at 4:30, one at 7.
Yeah, there was no. Okay.
So BT got the game last night. So maybe it was something to do with that.
I think it wasn't to do with the fact that Sky got extra games on so the Saturday 12:30 game didn't happen because of the coronation. The 3:00 windows were shown on telly for the first time.
Yeah, that was bizarre.
I think maybe to quell all the everybody's been drinking from 7 a.m. to celebrate the king. They needed something to do to distract them. So the games today: 3:00 Fulham Leicester, 5:30 Brighton versus Everton, and 8:00 Forest versus Southampton. And Brighton and Hove Albion now, they don't quite have it in their own hands, but Champions League qualifications right there for them.
Is it? I mean, Europa I think is where they'll end up, but they'll be happy enough with that.
Well, they're if they win their 3 games in hand on Liverpool, they'd be ahead of them.
Right.
They have 2 games in hand on Manchester United.
You wouldn't rule it out.
And they've got to make up 8 points. And Manchester United are in full swoon. That's why they're in the red here. That's what we're starting with.
Capitulation mode. I don't know where I wanted to start, but I guess we have to start with David De Gea. £375,000 sterling a week, £19.5 million a year this man makes on wages alone. And currently, his contract negotiations are up for renewal. June is when his contract is up.
If this is spot the ball, where's the ball at the moment in the photograph that we're showing?
Probably right under.
Nestling in their bottom right-hand corner as you look at it.
Does anybody notice? Very similar photo to last week. Keylor Navas.
Oh yeah, looking back in his goal.
Looking back in.
You
it's
could
a beautiful
see
sight,
the ball.
actually. Yeah, great sight. Do you like the pun?
No, I missed it.
On De Gea out.
On the way out.
Oh no, that's atrocious.
On De Gea out.
Could
well,
be. Still he has the most clean sheets in the Premier League this season.
Well, according to
he's a great goalkeeper. It's exactly what Eric Ten Hag wants.
If you're listening to Ten Hag
keep
last
getting
night.
told by loads of people.
I have.
He's not leaving the club, by the way.
I have live score notifications on for these games, and I forgot to turn it off watching the game because it's no good because you're on a stream. So it's I'm watching on a stream, so it's like 5 seconds behind. It's legal, but it's just streamed like now, and I could hear that vibration, which means that's a goal, and I could see Benrahma with the ball, and I was like, but he's not going to score from here. Like that must be a notification for a match report that's in previously. And when I left his boot, my first reaction was, oh no, because I immediately felt sorry for De Gea because I was like, he's just going to get it all over.
Yeah,
all over. And I imagine, I haven't even looked at our live comments, but I can imagine there's a lot of De Gea stuff outside of the stuff that we'll get to in the GAA in a while. But I felt terribly sorry for him. And I know you can't have too much sympathy for multimillionaires. And
no, you certainly
the guy's
can't.
had plenty of chances. He's been there at the club for now, was it 12 years this summer he'll be there. He's had no real competition for his place. So just a bit of complacency seeps in. The middle of the last decade, he was by far Manchester United's best player in a crisis period for the club. But now he's kind of been exposed for his inability to play.
Were they just unlucky as well? Like they hit the post twice. They created a few chances.
Couldn't hit the target.
Out of all the shots they had, they're not on target. But Bruno Fernandes nearly scored, and Anthony shaved the post, basically the same post, bottom left corner in the first half. And they were definitely the better team.
Had to hit the target.
Marcus Rashford hit the outside of the post, and they played really well. And West Ham were hanging on. So the Benrahma goal came out of nowhere. But look, outside of De Gea's mistake, United had plenty of time to close him down. So Luke Shaw shoulders Mikel Antonio out of the play, which is actually quite impressive strength. But from there, Benrahma picks the ball up. And then everyone just stands off him, particularly Victor Lindelof. Just stands off and just keeps him backtracking. And there's no need to backtrack that far out from your own goal. You're 45 to 50 yards out. You can close him down. The worst case scenario is that you'll foul him in the middle of the pitch and he probably won't get booked.
And to be honest, I think West Ham should have had a penalty as well. The Lindelof handball for me was
a penalty. It was a penalty all day long. And Jermaine Genius in commentary was no, I don't think it is.
I don't know what he was talking about.
No, I think he was like, I've said it now. I have to stay with it.
Yeah,
I can't change my mind.
It was a penalty all day long.
It was. He pretty much caught the ball.
He totally moves around to get his hand in the way of the ball.
It was a penalty all over, and in many ways, I was kind of hoping it was a penalty and that West Ham went 2-0 up at the break just to see what United's reaction would be like in the second half.
Might have been better.
Might have been a little bit better. But they were actually quite decent in the second half, and we've heard recently Eric Ten Hag coming out afterwards.
Were they? I don't think
eviscerating his players. I thought they were okay, but the worrying factor is the fact, this is 2 1-0 defeats in a row.
They keep fading away
against sides really, regardless of Brighton's form this season, they should be beating Brighton, and they definitely should have the upper hand in West Ham.
I don't know.
And then throwing away a 2-0 lead at Spurs as well. It's low-key been a very, very poor run for Manchester United recently. Yeah. Probably going under the radar a bit because they're not as interesting as they were because they're out of contention on both ends of the table.
So but they're in the red this morning. Elsewhere. They deserve to be in the red.
But at least in the WSL side, they're flying it. They're still top of the league. Chelsea have a couple of games at hands. They hammered Everton last night. Currently Brazil in goal. Being United beat Spurs 3-0 yesterday. It was a first half hammering particularly. And then this Sunday coming, they're in their first ever major final, the FA Cup final against Chelsea. We'll have more on that with Daniel Harris. But not an all-round terrible day for the club, but on the men's side, atrocious.
And Weghorst to 10, sorry, but that's finished. The thing's gone.
The subs bench is Martial, Sabitzer, Sancho, Dalot and Fred. And it cost a lot of money, but it's really useless.
It's pretty useless.
You ain't changing the game with those lads coming off the bench in the last half an hour of a match to try and
Anthony
turn things around.
His work rate is pitiful.
They've so much work to do in the transfer window. So it'll be very interesting to see if Ten Hag is given any opportunity to do that, or if it's going to be a period of nothing happening for a while. Because what happens if they don't qualify for the Champions League? Is the club suddenly worth less money? I mean,
probably, yeah.
Demonstrably, you would suspect it would be, and that'll be an opportunity for somebody to try and jimmy the price down. So quite a lot riding on the next few weeks for Manchester United.
Gary Neville made the point afterwards that it wasn't the worst thing that they lost again, because it makes Ten Hag's summer job easier again to clarify and decide who he wants in and who he wants out.
The one positive thing for United fans listening is that their away form has been absolutely atrocious. They only have one away game left. It's against Bournemouth. I'll be at Old Trafford next weekend for the Wolves game, which all of a sudden has become an absolute must win.
I think Wolves are safe now, having beaten Villa at the weekend.
So. Well, that's it too, so Wolves mightn't have much to play for.
Well, we might get to this with Daniel too, but why was Aaron Wan-Bissaka not a concussion sub?
I don't understand how they're fixing his head. They're like, oh, he must have passed all his concussion tests, because that's how it works.
He got absolutely clattered.
Yeah, I actually missed the incident. I just flipped over at that stage back.
It's horrible.
On the temple as well.
Souček's on the ground.
Souček isn't great either. So Souček continues playing. At least United took him off, but they took him off tactically. They made that clear, because you can have a concussion substitute. It's a separate sub, and they took him off because we need Diogo Dalot for an extra energy. But it's unbelievable. Okay, he may not be concussed, but geez, it had all the makings of it. If you had seen a concussion best bits on YouTube, that collision would be included.
Oh yeah,
he absolutely nails him, and it's not too dissimilar to the horrible Gary Cahill, Ryan Mason incident that ended Mason's career 6 years ago.
Yeah,
it's awful. He got away with it, and who knows? We don't know if he is concussed or not, but it was just striking, and it's that's football's attitude towards it. And even on commentary, it's a bit blasé. It's a bit, I thought he wouldn't have been taken off there for concussion. He wasn't, and they continue. Football has a huge problem with it.
Yeah. It was concerning.
All right.
Yeah, move on to Ulster Rugby, which Dan McFarland, I don't know what you say about Dan McFarland at this stage. 15-10 defeat at home to Connacht with a home semi-final as the carrot on the end of the stick, and they just couldn't get it done. And you look at the last number of years that Dan McFarland has been in charge at Ulster, and you're thinking, right, so they haven't won a trophy since 2006, and that was the benchmark for the last couple of years for the club. Was it 2018 he took over? And just the performance, disjointed, I think, was a word that a lot of pundits have been using since that performance at the Kingspan Stadium on Friday night. And this came the day after they announced 10 of their current squad are heading off at the end of the season. So there was a little bit of emotion after the match, saying, couldn't even play for those lads. And Connacht were just more clinical. I think Dan McFarland said after the match it would have been a daylight robbery if Ulster had got over the line at the end and managed to squeeze out a victory. So it wasn't just the result but the performance, and very, very disappointing for Ulster, I think, and everyone concerned.
I think more damning even than all of that is Stephen Ferris on Twitter the next day basically saying that is there more to come around player unrest? Is McFarland's time done? And then there was another question, and they were all rhetorical, and then somebody was like, well, you answer them, and he was like, yes, there's more to come, maybe McFarland's time is done, and then he was yes to something else as well. But Andy Friend, this is really interesting, Andy Friend met Dan McFarland for coffee in the morning of the game, and McFarland is like, oh, you were jumping on the bandwagon there saying this is a free shot for you. Andy Friend's like, yes, I was, but it's not a free shot, but I was absolutely doing it because that's how this thing works. And it just seemed like they have genuine respect for each other, and I don't know, we've had Andy Friend on the show a couple of times. He came to a live show we did in Galway, and he's a really, really impressive character. So he's asking for people to have a little bit of sympathy with McFarland, saying he's a really good coach, and he might be a brilliant coach. It might just not have worked out for him at Ulster. There's definitely a need for something different. I don't know, maybe it's as simple as their 10 isn't good enough for this level. And because their backline is brilliant, but maybe there's also that the coaching ticket has gone stale or something up there. I don't know. It seemed to be one of the other suggestions coming from Ferris, and his comments was that it might not just be Dan McFarlane, it could be other coaches who are causing the issues. Having said all that, right, like the players who they're losing, there's none of them that you're thinking, okay, they really need them for next season. You know, those 10 players who are going, like, they're all replaceable. And that's that's how professional sport works. You do your time, you do your contract, you move on, but none of them are going to be missed to the point where you're thinking, oh, they're really screwed now, they've lost a real superstar player. There are loads of 10s knocking around Irish rugby at the moment. They need a better 10 than the one they have. Is it worth their while taking a risk on or trying to get somebody to come and play for them?
Yeah, and a super 10 and Jack Carty kicking all the points for Connacht against them.
Do they resurrect Joey Carberry?
Maybe,
Wouldn't rule it out.
Having said that, right, if I'm in Joey Carberry's situation, I'm not sure I want to go to Ulster, which looks like, we're back to the basket case scenario again. Now, Andy Friend's point is that the disappointing thing with this game, if we lose, everyone's going to expect us to lose. If you blokes lose the game, you've had a bad season, and you haven't had a bad season. That's Andy Friend's assessment of Ulster season. I think the rest of us are going to make our own minds up, and it feels a little bit like it's been a bad season for Ulster because remember the travel issues and they got hammered to 0 in the European Cup. It's like that doesn't speak to a team who are able to deal with whatever's coming their way.
Well, McFarlane said it was high up on his all-time greatest disappointments Friday night as manager of Ulster, certainly. But the question is, have Ulster progressed whatsoever? Like, they lost in the last 16 of the Champions Cup, albeit to Leinster. Now they're 12 or 13 points, I think, better off than they were in the URC as compared to last year. But you still wonder if it's progression, because then you see loads of players. Well, Jeff Tamag-Allen is one of the players leaving, and he's been fairly crucial to Ulster this season. So there are a couple of players in that list of 10 that you think, well, why are they leaving?
Well, they're very impressive on paper, but their inability to deal with pressure repeats itself all season long. Like, they finished 5 places and 18 points ahead of Connacht. They've already beaten them twice this season, and then it's a woeful display, like, outside of the try. And kind of kicking themselves to victory too. Like, it wasn't even like they were particularly outstanding either.
It's a lot of those penalties that Carty kicked were mistakes, stupid mistakes by Ulster. One was a Marty Moore knock on late on. Like, it's just like these are little tiny errors that Ulster could easily stamp out, but have been peppered in their performances of late. So, yeah, from Dan McFarlane's perspective, you'd be seriously concerned. But Andy Friend's tenure rolls on, at least one more day.
All right, on to Amber.
Bit of the Gaelic Games.
We have a clip here.
We have a clip first.
If you have to line that up, yeah.
It's the Wexford manager, is it? Colin, what's the clip?
No, it's Tom Dempsey who's speaking after the Wexford game. Wexford hammered about 600 wides in the game against Dublin. You could hear the seagulls echoing around. I think 9,000 people in Croke Park for Dublin beating Wexford in the hurling, but he was at pains to point out that hurling is missing a massive opportunity to promote the game at the moment.
My issue with GAA Go is that last year, probably one of the best sporting occasions we saw on television was the Munster final. It had controversy. It had, probably Tony Kelly standing over a sideline ball, the most dramatic sporting moment of the year. You had 2 counties that absolutely, and I never used the word hate in GAA, but absolutely don't like each other or dislike each other. Yeah. You had every element, and then you had 50,000 people thrown into Thurles. So we put that on television last year. We'd a repeat of that this year with 30,000 people, with the stakes even higher. And we have a product, hurling, which I think is one of the greatest sporting products in the world. We need to promote that. We didn't show that to the paying, or to the public, to the GAA public. And I just think that is absolutely crazy. It's horrendous marketing.
So that was was that on Saturday evening, Saturday 5 o'clock throw-in. Yeah, so that was on Saturday, and then obviously Donald Cusack said something fairly similar on the Sunday game last night, basically accusing RTE and the GAA of using hurling to try and get GAA Go up and running.
Exploiting it was the word, yeah.
Exploiting was the word that Don Logue used on the Sunday game last night. This is obviously, Michael Verney on the Saturday panel with John Duggan on Saturday, and then again in the papers today. In fairness, he obviously had written his column before they went on. I don't have it. Why don't I have it? There you go. Yeah, he was making the point that the RT pundits have been curiously silent on this. Pundits are paid to call it as it is, but there's a serious lack of dissenting voices from those working for the national broadcaster who know that what's going on is clearly wrong. So in fairness to Donal Logue, he came out last night on RTE and said this is wrong. That he said he sat with the head of sport in that studio and said, why don't we change the logo to a little rugby ball up in the top right hand corner. So I'd say Declan McBennett was delighted to have been name checked but not name checked by Donal Logue in the middle of the Sunday game last night. Does he have a point?
Yeah, massively. I don't agree with the rugby part. I think Jackie's response was good as actually to Donal Logue, which was totally understanding that rugby's going to get as much exposure as it is. We're world class at rugby, so we should be showing it. But there should have been a prediction of the best fixtures heading into this weekend, and it's criminal that Cork Tip Saturday evening wasn't on TV. Unbelievable. Like, it's another classic Munster hurling game that goes by. And Clare are this mythical team this year. If you're only getting your GAA on national television, 3 of their 4 games are on GAA Go.
Okay,
I completely agree with GAA Go as a concept. It's brilliant.
Well,
but it was yesterday afternoon was a total waste of time.
Okay, you can't agree with it as a concept and then say they have to handicap themselves.
I agree
as a
with absolutely everything about it, other than the choices of the matches this weekend.
Then no one's going to subscribe.
But you absolutely could subscribe.
Well, no one's going to subscribe to watch the Sligo and Clare matches. They're just not. That's not going to tick the number over.
If you work for GAA Go, you're putting those games behind the paywall.
Great for GAA Go, but
exactly.
A lot of people don't have it.
But they have the option to have it. Like, it's a very easy thing to do. It's a very easy thing to get your hands on. It's a really simple and reasonable value, you would have to say, mechanism. I think that there's a fair point to be made about the promotion of the sport of hurling, and this is just the latest in a long line. There's a lot of lip service paid to the growth of hurling, and some of that is actually on hurling people and their own insularity, and they haven't demanded changes, and they didn't allow Galway play underage hurling in Leinster for 10 years, basically took for that to happen. So, they're absolutely not without blame in this. It's true. If you look at what was the League of Ireland's LOI TV? Mm-hmm. I remember RTE made a big song and dance about, we're involved in this, and then the figures weren't great, and then essentially they were like, this is not for us. We don't want to be involved in this.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say GAA Go was ever in any danger of having difficulties, but RTE certainly can't afford to waste any more taxpayers' money, because they're wasting enough taxpayers' money at the moment. It's been a really badly run organisation for the best part of 2 decades, and they can't even find a presenter for their main flagship show at the moment. Can they afford to preside over another loss-making venture, which really we didn't need, because Sky were performing this service for the public already? And so they're absolutely desperate to make it work, and the only way to make it work is to be fairly nakedly commercial about it. I think that's the problem, that GAA people feel like we are being taken here by the national broadcaster, who we already pay €165 to for our licence fee, and now they're profiting off us again. I think that's I do wonder, why are RT involved in this? Why is the national broadcaster spending taxpayers' money on a venture like this when it was already up? That bit doesn't make any sense to me, right? But if you're going to do it, then you have to make it work. How are you going to make it work? You're going to put games that everybody doesn't want to see behind it? What's the point of that?
Well, so if you were deciding the schedule, so you're involved in both, right? So you have your foot in RT, another foot in GAA Go, and it's Friday morning, and it's your decision. Do you put Cork and Tip on TV or GAA Go?
Can I ask, is there somebody else involved in that conversation? Shouldn't there be? Isn't this actually a 3-way conversation where the GAA are saying that, the GAA, who obviously own 50% of GAA Go, or whatever the balance is? I don't think it's a joint venture. Do we know what the exact ownership is? I'm not sure, but let's assume it's 50-50. Isn't it somebody's job in the GAA to say, well, actually, that's going to be 3 of Clare's Munster Hurling Championship games behind a paywall, and they were pretty good last season, and they reached the Munster final, and actually maybe, the way they play, they've got Tony Kelly, one of the game's most marketable stars, who, as Tom Dempsey rightly pointed out, was involved in one of the most exciting moments in Irish sport last season. Maybe we could put him on free-to-air terrestrial TV, and maybe, so it's that bit where the GAA have decided that they don't want to promote the sport of hurling as much as the hurling people think it should be. And you'd have to say the hurling people on this point are right.
There are commercial considerations as well.
But if I'm RTE, I'm saying, give me the money. Show me the money.
Yeah.
Show me the money.
And if you're paying for ad time and ad space in those, at half time of those two provincial finals yesterday, you're thinking, Jesus, we would have had so many more eyeballs if the...
Yeah, but that's it, Shane. Like, the problem is, like, the Munster Hurling Championship is being sacrificed. It's like, okay, we'll use that as an advert and a promotion to get GA Go, which is fine. But the other issue is, like, so we're in Dublin, and you go outside here to the office, you go around the place, a lot of people are from, obviously, this area or thereabouts, or maybe Connacht or Ulster. A lot of people don't actually care that much about the Munster Hurling Championship. They're like, oh, that's fair enough, it's good behind GA Go. So you're actually still only getting very loud minority voices like Michael Verney and Donal Logue coming out and complaining about it. But it resonates to me in WhatsApp groups that I'm in that there was still a bit of apathy towards the fact that Cork and Tip was on GA Go and not on national television. People were quite happy to sit through 2 processions yesterday in the Connacht and Munster football final. So football is just far more popular.
The general sentiment of Donal Logue's comments I agree with, but some of the things you're saying I don't agree with. Like, I don't think everything's a conspiracy. I don't think
he's never saying it's conspiracy.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying this idea that RT and the GA would be exploiting hurling and they don't want to promote hurling. I actually don't agree with that. I don't think.
Well, they're clearly exploiting.
Well, maybe exploiting it, but I don't think they're purposely sitting down in meetings and going, we don't want the game of hurling to grow, so let's put those games off air.
That's not their job. Their job is not to grow hurling. It's the GA's job to grow hurling.
Yeah, of course, but the point was made on television last night that obviously the considerations behind choosing which games go on TV lead to promotion or otherwise.
That's true.
Yeah, it's true, but I mean, there are plenty of ways to promote the game of hurling, and
showing their best players, best matches up against each other.
For sure,
is the easiest, quickest way.
Then Donal Logue's make the point that his nephew or whatever could name all the Liverpool team, and maybe can't name the hurling players, but.
It's
different.
I mean, I do think the whole thing about like Liverpool play most of their games behind a paywall. Like the vast majority of their games are behind a paywall, apart from a few Champions League appearances if they're in the Champions League.
Yeah, but that's because there's no equivalent of national TV exposure to Liverpool unless Champions League. So you have no choice, but there's 2 choices here. That's the problem. How many more subscribers did GA Go get by putting Cork and Tip on it? Vast majority of people who get it at the start of the year. €79 pay up front, so they have no idea what matches are going to be shown.
Well, I made this point in Friday morning show. It was heightened this weekend because resources by the RT were put into the coronation of a king on a foreign land.
What was that about?
Which doesn't make sense to me.
What was that about? It was already wall to wall on a lot of other channels.
And I guarantee a lot of people watched it.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that a lot of people watched it. That's
BBC.
Like, no, big audiences for shite doesn't justify shite.
Yeah.
That is one of the most.
Your shite is subjective.
Well, no, it's not. It's not like they show Coronation Street and they show all this other stuff and they spend money on it. And they're like, oh, we make money on that. We make money. It's great, and loads of people watch it. It's like they could also watch it on ITV or on BBC. Do something. Be creative. Spend money on Irish stuff. Invest in Irish production companies. They don't do it. They take the easy route, and it's like, we're going to show the coronation, and we're going to show the funeral, and we're going to send our team over for. It makes no sense.
No,
it makes absolutely no sense. It's lazy and it's bullshit.
I'm not judging any Irish people who want to watch the coronation. I am a little bit, by the way. But having said that, you go and watch it on the BBC. Go and watch. And people, I heard the argument made to me at the weekend.
Go and watch it on the BBC.
Well, every country in the world is showing it. Yes, but our relationship with Britain, it turns out, is a little bit more complicated than most other countries. And also this argument that it's historically important to show it.
Get on YouTube.
Get on YouTube, or else it's not as historically important as the Queen's funeral. Say, for example, this is a coronation. This is a political event in my view.
Who cares?
Of a monarchy.
Who cares? It's a different part of the day. Show it if you want.
It doesn't matter. 4 hours worth of coverage. You're comparing it to this. And resources.
It's not a decision between both.
No, but it's resources. Like, they're pumping resources.
You'll still get resources to show Cork Tip. Yeah, I mean, you still will,
Yeah, but
it's a different argument.
They could have put those resources into Cork Tip. That's my point.
It's not the same people.
No, but there's budgeting concerns there.
It may well be the same outside broadcast trucks. But anyway.
We're basically all in agreement.
Yeah.
The exception of the coronation stuff.
We were putting the Munster and Connacht final in amber.
Yeah.
I was putting it in amber in the style of the mosquito in Jurassic Park, because that's about as relevant as they are these days. These games are busted flushes. We should not be subjected to the procession and coronation of the Munster and
see what you did there.
I can't even muster it up anymore. It's like
sorry, the games themselves as well, and I watched them 220 to 12 points in favour of Galway against Sligo. It's hard to analyse these games because you don't know where Galway exactly are at, but it was a solid performance, I suppose. Shane Walsh was the talking point out of that match. and he probably was.
And even then, it wasn't.
He was, because it turned out he was ill.
Yeah,
It really wasn't. You know,
but
there was
immediate
nothing.
aftermath.
And look, obviously, we send our condolences to the Clifford family,
of course,
on the passing of their mum. An incredible performance by David, who obviously was quiet the first day out against Tip, and then scores 2-6 yesterday. We'll talk about the football a little bit later on, but just remember that it is the taxpayers' money. It is your money that is funding all this. So if you feel strongly about it, then get involved in the conversation.
Exactly. So we'll move on to the green, I guess, and we have Cork Tip as one of our greens this morning. Cork 419, Tip 225. I'm sure you're buzzing this morning, Colin. I know, despite the fact that you couldn't see it properly, but by all accounts, it was a superb, pulsating game of hurling.
Fabulous. 30,500 in Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
30.5.
30.
Wow.
3-0.
Is that like, apart from the Liam Miller, is that one of the biggest you've ever had?
So, yeah, I don't have it to mind, but yeah, I can imagine.
And the rugby. The soccer and the rugby.
Yeah. There was a great shot, one of the corners, just it was so full, and a beautiful evening as well, and like, I regret not going down. I should have gone down, but the alternative was not there for me. Like,
we had Anthony Nash on Friday, and he just painted this incredible picture of what it's like on a Saturday evening under lights with the blue and gold jerseys streaming through the city, and just how exciting the whole thing was, and how the romance of the Cork Tip rivalry is that it's the real rivalry that Cork have. Like, it's
massive,
blood and bandages.
Yeah, and that area in Cork as well is really coming on. Like, it's always been like a very nice area, beautiful spot, but it's been developed massively. Like, it's going to be the place to be, even more so in the coming years, and you can walk from there into the city afterwards too. So Saturday night, Cork was buzzing. There was videos all over online, and our own Aisling O'Reilly was down there, and she said, like, the buzz here is incredible. I mean, I am biased, but that was a neutral report.
And then on the pitch, Cork trailing by 5 early in the second half, trailing by 5 again with 7 minutes to play, and then that late burst of goals, 2-4 to 1-2 in Cork's favour in the last number of minutes, was just mad.
Yeah, they're back.
They are back, but it shows a bit of... Well, they might not be, but
they might not be back.
It shows a bit of resolve.
Lovely greeting there for Quiddy. Just heard
Thumbs up.
Off camera.
Yeah, thumbs up, yes.
Thumbs up, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Tipperary and Cork.
We should have a word for the under-20s, Shane, should we?
We should, certainly. Sorry, Cork's given mention to the 220 football semi-finals, because bad weekend for Sligo in the Connacht final, but certainly the under-20s. The big dogs, is that what the captain called them?
Yeah.
After the last match?
The big effing dogs, is it?
Big effing dogs, yeah. I'll hold back from that one. But 1-8 to 9 point winners over Kerry, a fancied Kerry under-20 team at Pearse Stadium. And Paul Henry, the Sligo under-20 boss as well, dedicating that win over the weekend to Dylan Walsh from Owenmore Gales, who had his 18th birthday last Wednesday fortnight, scored the winning point in the Connacht final against Galway. And then in the days following, scarily was rushed to hospital with meningitis. So that game at the weekend was certainly dedicated to Dylan. But a deserved qualification, I would say, from Sligo's perspective. Held Kerry to 6 points in the first half, scored 1-3 themselves, went in level, and they were playing against a strong wind, so they had a standing ovation walking off at half time. And then the second half performance was brilliant. And look, they're looking to secure a first ever All-Ireland crown next weekend. They've never won at senior, minor or under 21s or 20s.
Yeah, I presume the whole country is cheering for them, given the circumstances, with the small pocket of Kildare, the lone exception. Kildare versus Sligo in the under 20s, Kildare versus Sligo in the seniors.
Yeah, good to see it. And Kildare's winning the 20s, by the way, against a very good down team under Laverty.
Yeah.
Parnell Park 1-11 to 2-7, and that
back from the dead.
That was amazing. Jack McKevitt with the last kick of the game, sending Kildare into a second successive final. And that game is going to be fascinating in the final, because both teams will fancy it all of a sudden.
That's an Elton John reference.
Sad night's all right.
Couldn't fit the whole word in.
Saturday night's all right.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, good stuff, yeah.
Puns are on point this morning, Colin.
Right, last one quickly. We're out of time.
Yeah, Arsenal deservedly get a mention in the green. Mikel Arteta said, lads, before the Newcastle match, he threw on the All or Nothing
did he?
documentary in the hotel to the Arsenal players.
Really?
No, he says he threw on one scene. He got them all to sit down in a room, and it was a scene where Arsenal players are all dejected, and it's zooming in on all of their individual faces. He wanted them to see themselves dejected, imagine that feeling after the match against Newcastle, and say, let's not feel like that.
It must have been a direct reference to St James's Park this time last season. Yeah.
Correct.
It must have been that game where Granit Xhaka came out afterwards and eviscerated his teammates.
Yeah. So, well, it worked.
Times change.
Yeah.
Got to really give them credit here. This is phenomenal.
That's brilliant.
To recover the way they have recovered is absolutely sensational. I think that we'd all thought that they were going to be flaky, and I think this really sets them up for next season.
Yeah.
Because it did feel like there was a swoon coming. There had been one. I mean, if they could have just done this against West Ham or Liverpool or Southampton.
Yeah, it's true. But the title race is not over.
stage.
No. And we thought
if they'd done it against one of those teams, you'd be like, oh, it's over now because Arsenal are going to look. They've gone to St James's Park and they won.
They'll forever have that regret about what happened after going 2-0 up at Anfield.
Yeah.
But the return yesterday was great, and like we talked about earlier in the performance rankings, Ulster and pressure and their poor relationship with it. Arsenal on the other side, like in WSL, they beat Leicester on Friday night. They're always going to win that game, like well favourites for it, but to win 1-0 and to also stay in the title race, and then to do it on the men's side too. It's been a great weekend for the Gunners because a lot of people looking at that game yesterday away to Newcastle thought trouble here, and it's great for the Premier League title race because Man City beating Leeds, it would have been all over really. All over had Newcastle won, and what a result to win it at St James's Park. They've been phenomenal there this season,
and Odegaard's finish was superb as well. You look at Arsenal's fixtures.
I think that it was miles out. It was miles out.
Not supposed to be scoring from there, but it turns out you don't buy a ticket, you don't win the lottery.
It went through centre half's legs. I think it was either it must have been either Shar or Batman.
This is top quality stuff, lads. But yeah.
Sorry, Brighton at home, Forest away, Wolves at home. That's Arsenal's last 3 games. So title race still up there.
We're out of time.
Just admiring a good finish.
Jesus.
Are we done?
Yeah, we're done now. You've ruined it.
There you go. Right, that's this week's Gillette Labs Performance Rankings.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
6 full minutes late to our next slot. A reminder, Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of Off the Ball. Braeburn Coffee is coming to an Applegreen store near you. New Braeburn locations are popping up every month. Visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience. Up next, Daniel Harris, but first a little bit of Robbie Keane chat at Leeds from the Sunday pay-per-view.
Boy, was he excited to be on the same dugout as Pep.
Yeah. I don't think anyone could have watched that game on television for more than 5 minutes and not realise that Robbie Keane was part of the Leeds coaching staff. He was obviously to the forefront of the entire drama by the touchline. It's a good opportunity for Keane. He really wants to be a manager, and I'm very excited and very interested to see how it goes. The FAI thing for Keane was a bit of a mess for all parties. I don't think Keane did anything wrong in that scenario, but it was a bit of a mess. But he wants to be a manager. He had probably his own reasons for not going and taking the plunge in the last 6 months or so. But I'm really interested to see how it goes because the journalist in me admires Robbie Keane's contacts book. It is unrivaled. You know, he's got access to like all of the great coaching minds in Europe. Really, like he spent time at Real Madrid with Ancelotti. He obviously knows Modric from his time at Spurs, and now he's on this UEFA committee of football geniuses. Basically, this board of football heads like Mourinho is on it, Vieira is on it, Benitez is on it. All these guys, Maldini's on it, I think as well. All these guys who are who are basically the UEFA brains trust and going to feed into UEFA how they should change the game, etc. So Keane is keeping rarefied company on that. So he's got a hell of a lot of ideas to tap into when he does take the plunge into management, and I'm really looking forward to seeing when he does it.
It will be interesting to see if Leeds manage to stay up. They've Newcastle next, then they've West Ham, and they have Spurs at Ellen Road. 4 points might be enough. It's certainly doable. Will Leeds look at Big Sam and Robbie and say 3-year deal?
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. The Football Pod.
Jack O'Connor said, don't ever read a paper, it softens your head. It turns your mind to mush. You're kind of thinking, why did he say that? Or what did he mean by that? Or does he rate him higher than me? It opens up something that you do not want opened.
The only thing inter-county players should be looking at or listening to is the Football Pod.
Subscribe to the Football Pod wherever you get your podcasts. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, Daniel Harris is with us to talk about Manchester United and what appears to be an inopportune time for a swoon at the end of the season. Daniel, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
On balance, they probably deserve more from the game than they got, but at the same time, when your goalkeeper throws one in, you kind of run the risk of losing.
Yeah. If your goalkeeper throws one in and you can't score, you deserve to lose. And I don't really hold by this deserve metric in that, or not. There is a metric that has been determined precisely to determine who wants to win a football match, and it's called the score. And if the other team score more than you, I think it's quite hard to argue that you deserved any more than you got. And I didn't feel, and I nor the people around me in the ground felt that United deserved anything out of that game because, as you say, the keeper threw one in and they couldn't score.
Was the performance bad generally? Because obviously, on telly and watching highlights, you don't really get a full sense of it. So, was there energy? Was there direction? Did it look like they knew what they were doing?
It did until West Ham scored. I think that we've seen these games before. We saw them sometimes last season under Rangnick, and we saw them quite a lot under Van Gaal as well, where United would play okay for 20 minutes, but if they didn't score and then the opposition did, they would lose. And that performance last night was quite reminiscent of that, where once United went behind, I don't think anyone in the away end really thought that United were going to come back from that, because just there's lots of reasons that they've lost confidence, their legs have gone, and I think probably their heads have gone as well a little bit, where they're not playing with the same intensity, they're not playing with the same composure on the ball either, and just a lot of players have gone off form at the same time, and Ten Hag doesn't really trust many of the ones that are on the bench. So what you end up with is the same players who play every game, and then cycling through various others in the hope that one of them will give you a performance when you want one.
You listened to Ten Hag after the match last night, Daniel, and you expected David De Gea is going to sign a new contract, albeit with much reduced wages from his current standings. Is that the right decision, do you think, from United perspective, if he does sign on? He's been a great servant to the club, of course, but there have been a lot of errors and mistakes, both with distribution and goals like last night let in.
I don't know if Ten Hag really means that, because I think that I'm sure Ten Hag wants a goalkeeper, a better one, a number one goalkeeper. But given all the uncertainty about the takeover, number one, he doesn't know if he's going to be able to buy one, because there might be other things he needs and wants more. But also, there's still a bit of this season to go. So if he sits there and says, well, actually, we're not offering David De Gea anything, then to be in a position where you have to rely on him doesn't really make a lot of sense. So the only way that he could probably be honest about David De Gea was if he decided that he was going to Jim Leighton him and just play Jack Butland or Tom Heaton instead for the remainder of the season. And I feel like I could probably get behind those, because De Gea's made 2 errors in recent games, the one in Sevilla and the one against Sevilla and the one last night, that it feels like there probably has to be some consequences for that. So if he didn't play again, I wouldn't object to that. United they've got 4 games. They need to probably win 3 of them, and they've got a cup final against Manchester City. Feels like someone's got to make a decision, because although De Gea is still capable of making brilliant saves, as you say, they can't really play the kind of football they want to play with him. And it's not even just the distribution, as you say, it's the refusal to leave his line, which makes it difficult to defend with for the defenders. And also the team are playing 10 yards deeper than they need to, which means the attacking players get the ball 10 yards lower down the pitch. And it all looks something of a mess now.
I know you say there's more than likely other areas of the pitch that he'll feel the need to strengthen in, but that seems like a fairly fundamental building block from that perspective of someone who believes in his own ability to coach players, which we've already seen this season, and then his style of play. I'm talking about Ten Hag here. It feels like a goalkeeper who was pushing everybody forward and telling everybody what to do would actually be very transformative for this group.
100%, and there are definitely people that watch United that will say the first thing they would do is buy a goalkeeper. I think that what's probably happened with Ten Hag is he probably decided that he could get by with De Gea for another year if he has to, because if there was perhaps an obvious goalkeeper that you could go and get, then perhaps he'd be not more motivated, because I'm sure he's extremely motivated not to have what happened last night happen again. But a centre forward is probably more necessary than a goalkeeper, and even the midfield player might be more necessary, because if you've got someone scoring goals at the other end and you've got someone who helps you control the play, then there's actually less for the goalkeeper to do. But I agree that a goalkeeper is a fundamental thing in a football team, because it's not just the saves, it's the security that enables the rest of the team to play in the way that they want to. And Ten Hag wants United to play dominant football. So in order to do that, you need to be able to play a high line, and you need to be able to retain possession. You need to be able to build play properly. So it's not a situation where people don't think United need a goalkeeper, but you could just as easily say, well, they also, in order to have a football team that's good, you need to be able to control midfield, and you also need to be able to have someone who's going to score goals. So, I mean, I don't know what the correct answer is, but perhaps the notion that there isn't an obvious goalkeeper who you would buy, who would be absolutely certain would come in and be great, makes it more significant that you go and get a centre forward and a midfield player. Whereas if you had, say, Edwin van der Sar available, an equivalent to that, then you might think, well, I definitely must go and do that.
I know that De Gea has probably been exposed by the fact that it's hardly an excuse, but exposed by the Varane and Martinez being out of the team as well. Does Ten Hag, Daniel, have to take any responsibility for the decisions in advance of the game? You see Wout Weghorst starting a match for the first time in over a month, and a very unimpressive 56 minutes. Now, Anthony Martial, when he came off the bench, wasn't exactly any more impressive, but it just only serves to highlight the need for a goal scorer in this United team, because so many chances were wasted last night.
Yeah, I mean, this is a peripheral point, but I don't understand why United never have strikers on the bench, really. I get the fact that they don't have senior strikers, but there's something about centre forwards who know where the ball's going to drop that chucking on a winger will not do the same thing. So, I mean, we saw it when Danny Welbeck was coming through. He would be on the bench well before he started playing regularly. Kiko Makeda scored 2 goals in 2 games, did almost nothing else, but Fergie had him on the bench, and a bench that had fewer substitutions allowed from it, because sometimes you need a goal, and when you need a goal, you need a centre forward. And so I don't think, for me to be very clear, I don't think the solution is putting Joe Hugill on the bench, but at the same time, I probably would have Joe Hugill on the bench because United don't look like the team that knows how to score. As for Weghorst, I mean, I don't understand why he started last night, because it was hard to see what Ten Hag's plan was in order to get him to contribute something, given that I don't know how many starts he's made for United, but he scored once against Nottingham Forest in a game, I think they won 3-0, 3-1 in the League Cup semi, and he scored once in the Europa League against a team, I can't even remember who it was, but it was a game United won easily. He hasn't scored in the Premier League. So the idea that playing him as a number 10 last night was going to make something happen was very hard to believe, even though I understand that Ten Hag probably wanted to make a point to Anthony Martial that his performance in midweek meant that he had to not be in the team last night. So, and it is beginning to look a bit messy from Ten Hag, in that he had that period after the World Cup where he just seemed to be making great decisions all the time, where he'd analyse a game at half-time or after an hour, work out why it was United were doing well in that game, make a change or two, and then you'd see the change reflected very quickly in what happened on the pitch. And when United appointed him, that was something Steve McLaren said about him, that he just had a really great ability to read a game and work out what needed to be done to tip that game in his favour. That hasn't happened for a long time. And I think last night he picked the wrong team, because also it's not just playing Weghorst there, but if you play Weghorst there, it means you're playing Bruno wide. And Bruno's the guy who's most likely to make a goal happen. He doesn't have the pace to go on the outside of players. So if you put him wide, then you're effectively limiting your ability to create by taking your most reliable creator out in the middle of the pitch. What also happens then is, if you think you've got Casemiro and Eriksen, neither of those have got any speed, then you've got Weghorst in front of them, no pace. Then you've got Bruno wide, no pace, and then on the other flank you've got Anthony, who does have a bit of pace, but he's not lightning. And then everything starts to look very, very slow and predictable. So often you can see what Ten Hag's trying to do, but last night was not one of those occasions. And I think, he does also have to take some responsibility for that. But to go back, Colin, to your point just a moment ago, the absence of Martinez and Varane is also making a massive difference, because first of all, it's taking Luke Shaw away from left back, and Luke Shaw's doing a really good job at centre back. He's good, apart from that ludicrous error at the end of the Brighton game in which he was United's best player. He's a good centre back, but United lose something when he's not a left back, because he gives them thrust going forward, and he's also got a good relationship with Marcus Rashford, and they miss him. And they're also missing Varane, the security that you get from Varane, the knowledge that he's going to win almost every header in his own box. He's got some recovery pace as well. And then you've got Lisandro Martinez, who is aggressive, who's winning the ball as soon as he can to get the team high up the pitch. And also he's probably the team's principal playmaker in a way, because he's the guy who's hitting long diagonal passes or who's carrying the ball forward. And without him, United just don't have that. And it is making a massive difference not having those two players.
Do you think that they're still going to qualify for the Champions League?
Oh man, I'm just thinking about the prospect of having to sit through another season of Europa League, thinking I will do time if that happens. But they should have just about enough to make it happen, because of the 4 games that they've got, none of those teams have anything to play for. But if they don't win the next one, if they don't beat Wolves at the weekend, then it will look unlikely that they're going to manage that. They should still manage it from here. But if they don't, I think that will be a fairly significant blow. And if you remember at the end of it all, they've got a Derby FA Cup final against the team who are better than them, who are playing much better than them, who are also trying to emulate a treble that United won. I mean, it's looked like this for quite some time now. I mean, I guess in the beginning I started talking about it like it was a joke, that in some ways that United's best season in a decade could end in absolutely fantastic disaster. But as we now chug towards that situation, it looks like absolute disaster is actually fairly likely.
One of the hallmarks of those great United teams was that games would never peter out like they did last night. If they're a goal down, they'll usually come back, and Fergie time was always the time in which they got those goals, and certainly this time of a season with so much at stake in this top 4 race, these games are so crucial. And to see United losing these games in the fashion that they are, does it show a weakness in mentality or something to that effect, Daniel? Because it's clearly a time of the season where you have to be winning these games.
Yeah, I mean, there's weakness in mentality, and we've seen that with some of these players for quite a few seasons now. There's also weakness in ability. That the players Ten Hag has bought, and there's Bruno Fernandes and there's Luke Shaw, and there's Rashford, but I'm sure he's not mad about the others, and that's just very basic players that aren't good enough. That if we think about the players that United want to sign this summer, if you said to me you can buy any players that you like, and this isn't just me going, right, I'm going to go and sign Erling Haaland and Kylian Mbappe, but I would be saying, well, I want a centre forward, I want a midfield player, I want basically Christian Eriksen with some physical presence, I want a right back, and I want a goalkeeper. Those are 4 players I want for the starting 11. I also want another midfield player for depth, and I also ideally would want really another centre forward for depth as well, and I would want a third choice centre back. So that's quite a lot of things that United need. And if you look at Arsenal, say, and you look at Manchester City, Arsenal thinking, well, they probably want a better player than Granit Xhaka, but after that, they're just signing depth. Manchester City, they're not signing players. Who are they signing in the summer? Like they have more or less the team that they want. So for United to catch up, there's a lot of work to be done. But to come back to your mental weakness point, we've seen it with these players, and some of these players actually were quite good at coming back when they went behind. They had that season under Ole where they regularly went behind, particularly away from home, including a game at West Ham actually, and they got really good at coming back, but the weakness was getting into a position from which they needed to come back in the first place. Last night was just kind of a lack of quality and a lack of intensity, where it was really only in injury time where they looked like they might score. They had the Anthony Martial chance, and then they had the header that he should have scored as well, but prior to then, they didn't. I think they had 1 shot on target maybe in the second half and 1 shot on target in the first half, and 1 they hit the post. They didn't really look like they were going to score, and there is weakness in mentality, and it was weakness in mentality that cost them against Brighton when Luke Shaw handling the ball in the injury time. That's not technical weakness, and Luke Shaw is a really good player. That is loss of concentration, loss of patience, loss of focus, whatever you want to call it, and just loss of panic. Who knows? But just doing something completely inexplicable at a moment of mediocre pressure is mental weakness. And I say that no one likes saying that about professional footballers that have greater mental toughness than the 3 of us that are having this conversation combined, and then some. Well, we couldn't perform under that kind of pressure. I'm absolutely certain of it. I mean, look at the mess I'm making of a few gentle questions here. So when I say it, I'm not saying that I'm better than that or I wouldn't have done that.
That's all right. We understand. Yeah, no need to rub it in.
What I'm saying is that professional footballers, one of the things that they do is the ability to perform under pressure is something that the likes of us can't really understand. And yet when you see these kind of errors, it is often that inability to perform properly under pressure. Yeah. So, yeah, these players are, some of them, not the toughest mentally. I agree.
It's what Ron McGarr always says. Pressure does very strange things to people. Last point here before we wrap up today. In the WSL, United beat Spurs 3-0 yesterday. 4 clear of Chelsea and still top of the table, but obviously Chelsea have games in hand. Do you want points on the board at this time of the season, though, just to follow on from that pressure issue?
I would say that Chelsea are favourites. They've got to play Arsenal still, and if United win all their games and that game's a draw, then the goal difference means United will almost definitely win the league. I think you'd probably rather be Chelsea if they were playing full strength Arsenal. I mean, if they were playing full strength Arsenal would still be in the running for the league title. But Arsenal, without so many of their best players, you'd have to back Chelsea to win that game. I hope United can do it. They are playing really well at the moment. They've got to play Manchester City, but United are playing well at the moment, and I think United will probably win their games. The performance like yesterday was just a really competent performance where Tottenham had 1 chance where Beth England went round Mary Earps and was saved on the line. She should still have scored. But other than that, United were totally dominant, finished the game really quickly. Look at a really good team. They've made massive strides this season, because what you're seeing individual players massively improving. Like Leah Galton's a much better player than she was last season. Ella Toone has also really, really come on a lot as well. So they look confident, but my guess is that Chelsea will just pit them. But the cup final should be a really good game, and United in a one-off game have definitely a really good chance to win that, the way that they're playing and the firepower that they've got.
Daniel, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
No, it's 0-2, everyone. Have a good day.
It's Daniel Harris there. JP Wright says Man United's lack of a top-class striker will cost them a Champions League place. Inferior goal difference will see them finish 5th. Are Manchester United back if they bottle the top 4 and only end up with a tin pot cup?
Obviously not.
Says Shane. I presume asking you, Shane.
Not me. Are United back if they bottle the top 4 and only end up with the Carabao?
Yeah,
obviously not.
You were like Man United had a better season than Arsenal.
Yeah, if they get top 4, I said.
That's what you were.
If they get top 4 and win the Carabao
That
Cup.
was your argument. It doesn't feel such like a good argument now, does it, Shane?
Well, certainly not if they don't get top 4.
No.
If they still get top 4, I think it's a reasonable season with much improvement to be made in the window.
How's your Carabao Cup now, Shane?
Doesn't taste too good.
Where's your Messiah now, Flanders?
The FA Cup. The FA Cup stopping City's treble is still to come.
25 minutes past 8. Alan Quinlan is with us. Alan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you? Very good, thanks, yeah.
Munster are back, though.
Well, I was just chatting to Philip Egan out at the desk there, and he said, look, sure, it'll be a day out for Munster on Saturday. You have Herbert Park's lovely markets there in the morning.
Yeah.
You can pop into the bridge for a beer, get a day out, do a bit of shopping.
Yeah.
And kind of just saying, look, no point in turning up, really, Philip will kill me now for saying that, but anyway, it has that bit of a feel to it. But look, we're going to start with Munster. We got to go back and talk about Connacht as well. I think that was
well, and
for
Ulster.
me, unbelievable. But for Munster, the result was brilliant. Getting the win.
You'd feel good about life if everybody who was injured hadn't got injured.
Correct. If you had that team going to play a rotated Leinster on Saturday, because Leo Cullen's come out and said that, obviously with the final the week after that, he will kind of switch it around again. But it's really difficult. But Munster can't do anything really about what Leinster do. They have the ability to make lots of changes and still be top notch, really. But it's unfortunate again. The injuries. You just think RG Snyman, when he's back, his presence gets another bang in the head. HIA almost certainly ruling him out because he had one a couple of weeks ago in South Africa as well. So Calvin Nash, Conor Murray, Peter O'Mahony, Malachi Fekitoa at the end, Diarmuid Barnes. So I think there's six of the starters.
Right.
It's difficult because they don't have the same type of depth. Now, to be fair, the players come on. I thought someone who's done brilliantly in recent weeks is Fineen Wycherley. He was incredible. That was a very physical game the other night. Having Tyke Byrne back playing 80 minutes after 3 months shows it's kind of freakish scenario, but it's the way you look after yourself when you're injured nowadays, and he was great. Gavin Coombs. Malachi Fekitoa, who's leaving, I thought he was outstanding, and he has been in recent times. He's a real player if he switched on, and Frisch was good. So they have a lot of positives. I think if you look at the stats, they're kind of crazy. Munster down for 36 missed tackles, which doesn't really, you know what I mean? If you were to watch the game, Jerry, you'd think, God, Munster were brilliant defensively, which they were. It was a lot of close-in stuff. I watched that back where Glasgow player had stepped someone, kind of wriggled through a tackle, and then they'd be tackled after that. There was a lot of that, a lot of footwork evasion, defenders beaten. Glasgow's numbers were very high. Munster had one clean line break. That was from Conor Murray for the red card from Tom Jordan. So it was a crazy kind of game. I was there. I think the first 15 minutes you felt, God, this is going to be difficult. But they dug in there, and I think they can take a lot of credit for what they did in the last few weeks. When you think the 3 away results, and we know in sport how difficult it is to win away from home. It can be a real factor for in any sport. But to go to the Stormers, the Sharks, and now Glasgow, 3 big scalps.
Yeah.
And given the Stormers hadn't lost in 21 or 2 games there, Glasgow haven't been beaten
all season,
year and a half.
Yeah, it's 17 months. Yeah,
they're the kind of things it doesn't give you trophies, but it shows the grit and determination that you've stuff to work on. The fundamentals of a team like Munster, I would have said, I've probably banged this drum for a while, and whether people agree or not, when you played it. From my time playing there, it's you have to bring a fight, a determination, a work rate, an honesty, and a passion. Sometimes people think they're given in sport, but you kind of have to have them be very aware of them, particularly when you play for for that team. That's what I learned anyway, and I think we've seen that in abundance in recent weeks. So, anytime you criticise a team in any sport, I think it comes down to, if you don't see that work rate and that effort and desire, you lose matches. Sometimes you're not good enough, sometimes you're lacking quality, all that kind of stuff in any sport again. But, the last few weeks they've shown some fight, and that is that's where your foundations to getting better, upskilling, bringing in a little bit more quality, getting one or two young players coming through from your academy, all that kind of stuff. As I said, it doesn't win you trophies. So the fight and determination and physicality they showed the other night was brilliant. One player, again, and I keep mentioning him, some people don't agree, but I think John Klein has improved dramatically as a player from where he was in 2019, where he got a lot of criticism, some of it justified when he got picked ahead of Devon Toner. Phenomenal, epitomises the kind of player you'd want to go out in the field with. I'm not saying he's better than Ryan Baird, James Ryan, Ian Henderson, but he should be in the mix for the World Cup. He should be looked at and he should be spoken about. And for the people online who kind of continuously say, well, his hands aren't good and should never have been picked, he's improved dramatically as a player, and the work rate. And Glasgow's maul has damaged people all season, and Munster stopped it the other night. They had a few scrum penalties, but by and large their scrum was really good.
So they can actually look forward. I understand the injury profile now is not great, right? But at the same time, there is a little bit of depth that they've built. A lot of the injury problems that they had, particularly in the second row and back row, have all cleared up. So Snyman's loss obviously is huge, but there is at least some strength and depth there that they'll be able to name players who we're excited to see into the future what they're going to do.
Yeah, Edwin Adogbo was there the other night, so he could come into the mix. Such a young, powerful, exciting player. Thomas Ahern, I think, is back training. Alex Candellan has played well recently. John Hodnett coming off the bench for Peter Mann. I thought Hodnett was outstanding as well. Defensively, the tackles, low tackle focus. So there is a bit of depth there, I think. And look, it's a tough situation for him. And again, I said this last week, if you buy into that, we're in bonus territory. It does take a little bit of pressure off, but going to Glasgow, if Munster were beaten, you kind of say, well, they made Europe, they made the knockout stages, turned around a dreadful start to the season, decent finish. There's two ways of looking at that. You are in a bit of bonus territory on Saturday because people, will expect Leinster to, that they'll just win the game and get through to another final. But, that can stimulate you as well if you use it the right way. But it was a great win for him. There's certainly areas that they need to be better in.
Dennis Leamy possibly worth a mention as well. I think he was name checked by Graham Roundtree after the match in terms of the work he's done with the defence, especially since that Glasgow game in December. When you think back and the errors across the pitch, Leamy's done a lot of good work.
Yeah, and I think defence isn't just it's about attitude as well. As I said, the stats of the missed tackles kind of look bad on paper, but Munster were superb defensively. I think they were really aggressive and physical. Glasgow, a very powerful side, and they were incredibly physical, and Munster stood up to that. So, yeah, I think Dennis has done a great job. And if you look at Munster where they were probably last couple of seasons, there's certainly a lot to build on and be optimistic about, because their attack is so much better, and they're trying to play, and they've two wingers now that are looking for multiple involvements. I'm not saying that they're not going to win anything. We didn't expect them to win anything, but they're in a good place, and I think if
you can build on this. It didn't feel like Munster were building on anything over the last couple of years.
There's a lot of repeat, wasn't there, in the last couple of years?
That's the definition of insanity. So let's move on, because we do need to talk about Ulster and Connacht. Andy Friend said that he met Dan McFarlane for coffee in the morning of the game. McFarlane was like, "Oh, look at you, we're in bonus territory." Have that conversation. He's like, "Absolutely," because we, got to take the pressure off us. The pressure on Ulster ratcheted up before the game by Stephen Ferris and after the game by Stephen Ferris. But he was 100% correct. It has been a bad season for Ulster. The rumours of an unhappy camp, the 10 players leaving. As I was making the case, most of those players, doesn't really matter they're leaving. Some of them are first choice, fair enough, but I think it's been a bit of a disaster of a season for Ulster, where it looked like they had at the end of last year this young attacking threat very exciting back line, and they just have not kicked on at all.
Yeah, it's been. I think they started really well, and they were in a very good position in the league for a long period. December in Europe kind of started a bad run. Away to Sale, they were walloped in that game. Not progressing in Europe. It's always a kind of, they should be looking to say we need to be in knockout stages in Europe. When that doesn't happen, it's a disappointment. That's the way I view it anyway. For a club of Ulster's kind of size and stature, January poor. Losing in Benetton. Munster beat them in Belfast. Recently, they've gone on a good run of up to this point 5 league wins. They gave Leinster, you could say, a challenge in that quarter-final of Europe. But I think it's unfair. I agree a little bit with Andy Friend that, when you're in that situation, it's a similar situation if for Graham Rowntree if they went out, this bonus territory thing. Ulster's a bit different, I think, because there's an impatience there about them that they have very exciting players.
Yeah,
I think, and they don't seem to know really what way they're playing at times. I think their maul has been superb this year. I think they have got a little bit of steel. We've always kind of questioned their ability up front, but there's a couple of key positions, Jared, that they're
10.
Yeah, look, it's hard on Billy Burns, and I don't like, you don't want to personalise it, but I think, their front row has been a problem as well. Stephen Kitsoff is coming in, and it's very similar situation to Munster's situation. The reality is, how many Ulster fellas are on the Irish team?
Starters.
Starters.
None.
Yeah, you see, and that's it, and that's where you need to get to. So, and that's the yardstick really. And Munster have 1 or 2, and Murray, O'Mahony, Byrne, Henderson when he's fit would start.
Kitsoff's
Rob Herring's in there a lot.
Kitsoff's a great sign,
brilliant
right?
player.
But he is a loose head, right?
Yeah, he's a loose head.
Jamang
Allen's leaving now, the tight head. So,
should you be spending all your money on a loose head? Or is it actually better to kind of...
It'd be better to have a tight head if they're available. Yes, because that's really the cornerstone of your pack, really. But
maybe he'll be a ball carrier and he'll add a little bit of that to them. In fairness, they don't have that.
It's difficult to be over... I find it hard to I just think there's something missing there, and I think I don't know if it's a happy camp.
Ferris would say it's not.
Yeah, you hear little rumours that they're not a happy camp at times, and it's been a real roller coaster up and down. It was very eerie. But aside from all that, Connacht were outstanding the other night, and I think I said it here on Friday, and a lot of people said it, that this was a very dangerous proposition for Ulster because Connacht have a recent run of form.
Yeah.
Mac Hansen being back, Bundy Aki, a lot of their players are kind of
and the emotion
shown a bit of a spark as well recently, and they're on a good run. They were outstanding and really.
Prendergast, he's on the fringes of Ireland selection.
Yeah, he was very good the other night.
Very versatile as well.
Yeah, he was superb, and Seamus Hurley-Langton, he was outstanding. I think his overall performance, his abrasiveness, his ability in the breakdown, some of the lines he ran for the carries, and I think that set the tone. They set the tone pretty early with not being and when you're the underdog and when your backs are to the wall and there is an expectation there that the home team are kind of going to bully you, they're going to maul you off the park, they're going to out-scrummage you, it created a real edge to Connacht, and they continued that edge over 80 minutes. The hard yards, the work rate, the fitness level they showed was outstanding, and they deserved to be there. You didn't look at that game and say, well, Connacht kind of fluked it.
Yeah.
Throughout the game, they had that kind of feel about them that they were going to win this game, and Ulster were kind of dead in their feet. So there's a lot of questions to be asked about Ulster, why they lacked that energy the other night. Were they naive in thinking they were just going to kind of turn up and use their physicality and probably a little bit more size? Connacht aren't like that, and I think it's a great It was a great result for Andy Friend, given it could have been his last game.
Can you make an argument against the Stormers, or is that a bridge too far?
It's obviously for any team that would go and play the Stormers in South Africa, it's going to be difficult. I think John Dobson, their coach, was kind of concerned with that Munster performance. There's one of them in every team where they kind of get caught. It's hard to shift the momentum sometimes in rugby when on the day the opposition are like, really pumped and emotionally right for a game, and you start to make mistakes, you force things. So because of the collisions and in rugby like that, it can slip away from you and you can't shake off the opposition. But I think they've learned from that. They were very good against the Bulls on Saturday. So it's a big task, but this is not now the quote I'm saying about bonus territory. Connacht are in that bonus territory now because they've progressed.
Yeah.
They're in the last four.
And I think they have a bunch of players who've got Ireland experience, who've justified their selection, who presumably are having an influence on. Finlay Bealham was back, obviously, and that's making everybody who plays for Connacht think, actually, I can have the dream of playing for Ireland while playing for this team. Which, let's face it, the vast majority of Connacht's history, you had to leave Connacht to get selected for Ireland.
Yes, correct. The only time we really saw a big group of Connacht players en masse was 2016 when they won the league, then beat Leinster in Glasgow. There was 5 or 6 of them on that Irish tour to South Africa. So they're playing for a lot as well, because Andy Farrell will be watching all this stuff. Bundy Aki showed the type of player he is, and the quality he has, and the experience and the physicality, big turnovers, making hard yards, and so it was a great performance for Connacht. They deserve massive credit for that.
Okay, we haven't talked about Leinster. It was a mix of their first and second teams, and it was never really in doubt. The quality of Leinster's performance in various stages, like the Harry Byrne crossfield kick, that was sensational execution from him. Maybe he gets a lucky bounce, I don't know. Maybe he's practiced it a gazillion times and he knew exactly what he was doing. And then the camera pans to the lads in the audience, like, he's pretty good, he's very good, he'd play for Ireland, he's amazing, he's missing. All right, good strength and depth for this team. Like, it's hard for us to keep saying new things about Leinster.
Yeah, we're probably repeating ourselves, but it's just the seamless transition to make 9 changes in a team, and just to have the detail and the accuracy. And there's a sense with Leinster, they don't panic and they just put so much pressure on you in every situation. They're obviously all at a very high level from a resilience point of view. They don't nothing seems to faze them, and they just seem to back themselves, and there's a belief there that they can get these tries, and the way they can change gears as well, and then they drop back a gear or two and just do the simple things really well, which can be really frustrating if you're trying to get the ball back off them or attack them, because there's no gaps, there's no chinks there. Grant Williams, the scrum half, gets a crazy try to start the game. He's a super player and he's capable of that, but Leinster just don't panic up the field, and they've three quick tries in a short period of time, and that's the game gone.
Caelan Doris, majestic again, hardly a surprise.
He's just a wonderful player. It's consistent, it's constant. His skill levels are just through the roof.
His level never drops. It
doesn't. And Van der Fleer, they're similar type of guys who just... Jack Conan has been brilliant in recent times as well. He came on for Scott Penny. So when you're naming these guys, it's why they're international players, Shane, and why they're consistently performing against the world's best, because they're right up there. So Doris is just a sensational player to have. And his reading in the game is brilliant as well. He's just able to pop up at the right places and the right times. That's not by accident. That's by reading the game, being in good positions. And I think, you're rolling players off the bench then who are internationals, Gibson Park and Luke McGrath did really well. And I think if you were looking for any little chink in the armour, you think the halfbacks will go after them if you're the Sharks. But no, Harry Byrne was really good as well, and Gatai and Frawley in the centre. So it's hard to see anyone really stopping them, because they're on a level now that would please any coach to be in that position. So Scoreland maybe flattered him a little bit at times in that second half, but I think when the score when Max Deegan scores the try in the second half, that's the game. It's gone. It's over. And they're happy to contain then a little bit when they have to for periods of time, and they just do the basics so well.
Max Deegan is 26. If you were sitting down advising him on his career, what would the advice be? Stick with Leinster and harvest as many medals as you possibly can, or become first choice for one of the other provinces and force your way into Ireland selection?
For me, and again, he's in a very good environment, a happy environment, high performing environment. He's the one player I think about in the last couple of years. He got capped before Caelan Doris. They were kind of around the same time. Maybe he was a year or two ahead, and Doris has just gone on to a different level. Your career's over, it goes pretty quickly, and for me, I'd want Ireland caps. I think you need Ireland caps. You need to be in that mix. There's a risk of moving provinces and it not working out. We've seen that happen with some players. We've seen other players, it worked for them. There's no point in going back through all of them. But I think he's at a moment now. But I think he signed a new contract. Scott Penny signed a new contract.
Scott Penny's a bit younger, so I kind of and also like the age profile of Van der Fleer. Van der Fleer could do another 5 years and make us all stupid, but he might not. Like the wear and tear.
And you look at the open size; they've got Will Connors as well. So Scott Penny. They have a lot of players. I don't know. It depends what they're feeling themselves. If you believe in your own head that you're going to get into the team.
Well, I was going to say, because so Jimmy O'Brien is also 26, but Jimmy O'Brien is so bloody good at the moment that like he's stayed in the Leinster environment, got selected for Ireland.
He was starting in Europe. If the way I would look at it is, it's fine. Nowadays you're not really dropped, you're rotated.
Yeah.
But when the European quarter-final comes around, or a European semi-final, or a European final, are you starting?
Well, Max Deegan was in South Africa and Jimmy O'Brien wasn't on that.
Correct. So if I was advising him,
I think
he needs to start thinking about it quickly, because I think he's good enough to play for Ireland, but playing, I don't know, you want to start in the big European games. If you're not starting in those games, it's difficult. But then if there's an injury or two in that Irish back row, there's a real chance that Max Deegan will be
straight in
the mix or there. So it's a difficult one. It's not like it was before. If you weren't starting your province, you were down the grade and there was no way you were going to be picked for it. We saw that with Scott Penny in the Six Nations when he got called in. So it's a difficult one for him. But I think next year you'd want to be. He needs to start starting those big European games.
Are you hearing much talk in Limerick about Ciaran Dooley? 30 points for Turnier College yesterday to win the AIL for the first time. They beat Clontarf. 20 points against Cork Con in the semi-final as well. This lad's a bit of a
back
supremo.
up to Ben Healy at Glenstall, wasn't he? What a performance from Turnier that second half. You could check a load of their players. Super win. Great to see the atmosphere in the crowd as well.
Buzzing.
I always get a warm feeling about the club game, and where it all started for me with Shannon. It was brilliant, for both clubs. It's a tough place to get to. It's so competitive, the AIL now, and that second half yesterday, I think Clontarf will be frustrated with their discipline and some mistakes, but the Turnier side and the backline in particular have punished teams all season. If you're loose, if you get a turnover, and some of the tries they got were sensational.
50 points on the board as well, not bad.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Quinny, good stuff. Thanks a million. See you again on Friday. It is 8.
See you in Herbert Park, will I, Ger?
Yeah.
Saturday morning.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Drinking our vitamin H. Well, the Munster fans will travel, right? Big numbers.
I'm sure they will.
This being their cup final and everything, what?
Yeah. They're in bonus territory, a day out in Dublin, yeah. Philip Egan. I'll bring it back and Philip.
Oh God, if Munster win, it's going to be terrible. Yeah, all right, here's Tommy Rooney and James O'Donoghue reflecting on Kerry's easy Munster final win yesterday.
I was saying to Jack after the game, when you have a full back like Foley and the athleticism that he has and the speed that he has, you can afford to back yourself. I know to play Morley in that role, but you can afford to back your full back. You can't trust them to go one-on-one. When you're a forward and you're up against someone with, now Sexton's speedy too, but if you're up against someone with that pace and power that Foley has, how are you meant to make runs off him? Because you roared at one stage, you don't make straight runs off Jason. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is, when you're looking for the ball off a kick pass, you know the type of fella you're going to be marking. If you're faster than him, you can make a nice straight run, and you know that he's going to have to leave you win the ball because you have him for pace. As you get older and the pace starts to go a little bit, and very often your marker might have a yard on you, you have to be a bit cuter with them. And even though Quinlan Sexton is in the prime of his career, Jason Foley is so quick that you have to change up your runs at different times. So there's a couple of ways to do it. Either you get physical with him and try and push him out the way to get the extra yard, or you put angles in your runs and you have to work so hard, maybe get 5 or 6 different runs in different directions. But if you just go for one run dead straight against a Jason Foley or a Tom Sullivan, they're going to beat you out to the ball realistically, and they're going to make you remember it as well. You know, it's going to be in the back of your head for the next ball.
There's full post-match reaction with Jack O'Connor, Colm Collins and James O'Donoghue on the OTB Podcast Network for you. Colm Mullaney is here before we get to Sarah Donovan on the hurling call. Good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How's it going?
What's going on?
Well, busy day in the Premier League. 3 more matches down for decision, and important ones too in terms of the relegation battle. Leicester go to Fulham at 3 o'clock. Second from bottom, Everton away to Brighton from 5:30. And then Nottingham Forest and Southampton are both in the bottom 3. Meet at 8 o'clock tonight. Celtic sealed the Scottish Premiership title yesterday. They were 2-0 winners over Hearts. And a busy day ahead in the Championship as well. The final round of fixtures. Some of the playoff spots still up for grabs. 12 games in all in the Championship today. All of them underway from 3 o'clock this afternoon. In the golf last night, Wyndham Clark finished strongly to win the Wells Fargo Championship. 4 back 9 birdies for him. He finished on 19 under par to finish 4 strokes clear of Xander Schauffele at Quail Hollow. Seamus Power, decent enough week for him. 7 under par, tie for 18th. Not so good for Rory McIlroy. He finished on level par in that, and the PGA Championship is coming up next week. In motorsport, Max Verstappen extended his lead at the top of the Formula 1 standings to 14 points. That was after winning the Miami Grand Prix, and there's racing at Roscommon this evening. First off there at 4:30.
Carl, good stuff. Thanks a million for that. It is 8:51. Sarah, good morning to you.
How are you?
Cork are back, or are they?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. And you know what the big thing is? It was the hunger that we saw on Saturday night. And for Cork teams, since maybe 2013, when they last got to, I suppose, an All-Ireland final, that was the hunger and desire that's been lacking in a team from Cork over the last 8-9 years. And that team, that likeability, that personality Saturday night, that's what Cork people will follow. And actually, I think they've probably gained a lot of fans from literally that last 30 minutes.
I was texting with a friend of mine who is a Limerick supporter and who was like, Cork, they're always flaky. Every time they get back level, they concede a goal. That's why blah, blah, blah. And then by the end, it was like, well, actually, you know what? Maybe things have changed. Because that was the big knock on them, that they're a bit soft, that they don't have that character, that personality to come back. And look, one swallow doesn't make a summer, but it's really important that like they can build on this and actually rally around the whole point that against Tipperary, who were really, really dangerous, they didn't go away when they had every excuse to go away.
Yeah, and in previous years, I'll go back as far as 2014, Croke Park, quarter final against Tip. Shane McGrath was captain of Tip that year. That was a flaky Cork team who didn't show up, who sat back, who allowed Tip to dominate them. And there's players on the team on Saturday night who were there in 2014. So for those guys to now have that, it's pretty impressive for those guys to find that hunger, to find that desire so late in their careers.
Did it feel like Cork were targeting goals? Because it feels like they had only 1 goal chance maybe against Waterford, and banging in 4 at the weekend is a positive sign that they're maybe going for them.
I thought it was stunning, but it's their pace, and it's their pace. They put Tip on the back foot. Let's be honest, in the first half, Tip were able to read the game really well. Brian O'Mara, Ronan Marr, and in the second half, Cork's only option was to literally burn them for pace, and they have it, so they used it.
Were they bullied a bit in that first half, or was it like the tactics were wrong that it made it look like they were being bullied a bit?
I was a bit confused with the change up in midfield, with Luke Meade not starting. Brian Roach had a new midfield partner. It just seemed a bit funny when they had gone so well against Waterford and had dominated that area, when the likes of Jamie Barron had been doing so well previous. For Pat Ryan to mix it up, I think it took Cork time to settle.
The thinking must have been somehow horses for courses, that it just didn't work out in that first half.
Yeah, and look, we talk about Noel McGrath all the time, like his vision, his distribution of the ball. He has so much experience, and I think that was just a little too much. It was a bridge too far for Tommy O'Connell, and it was a bridge too far for Brian Roach. So in that second half, you had Luke Meade coming in, you had Tim O'Mahony, massive performance for Tim O'Mahony, and Declan Dalton, lads, like that kid, I met him in Tenerife last Christmas. He was in a boot. He wasn't in Cork's plans last year with the old management. His career looked finished, and what a performance he gave on Saturday night.
It's when there's chaos as well. We often talk about the great Dubs team, that when games get chaotic, they keep the heads. I'm not comparing Cork's hurlers to the Dubs, but when it gets chaotic, they seem to be able to keep their heads.
Well, the build-up for that last goal, there was no panic. It was Dara Fitz, there was Shane Kingston, the build-up, and Brian Hayes was on the pitch 20 seconds. And it's not, he didn't go towards him to look for the ball. He actually stepped back and allowed the ball to come across and casually put it in, and then the hands go up and the crowd reacts. It was stunning, but it was the build-up play was just no panic. You're right, it was very Dublin-esque.
Couple of big away games coming up for them now next.
I think though, buoyed by that win, that draw, if they had lost to Tip, lads,
totally different environment, totally different atmosphere, total different sense.
They'd have been peeling themselves off the floor.
Yeah.
So I think going into this now, they're top. You know, the score difference will be a thing that it will come down to in the end, but I think massive confidence coming out of the game.
What about Tip?
I'd say they're sickened that they left that game behind. Have to be. Because they controlled it for so much of the first half. They outscored them, 12 points to 4 in that spell before half-time, and then came back again and got these goals. Garrod O'Connor's goal, Keown's goal. They did everything right, and they couldn't kill Cork off. That was magic.
Because even when you're listening to Noel McGrath after the match, it's like he wasn't aware of what had happened. He seemed a bit shell-shocked. He was like, what just happened there?
You couldn't believe that Cork could find 2 goals. 68 minutes on the clock, Tip are winning by 4. The game's over. And Tip couldn't see it out. And I think that Tip defence is phenomenal. So I think they were exposed, really badly exposed.
Yeah, I still think Tipperary are going to have a long... And I didn't see the injury to Jason Ford, what happened, but he'd already 4 points in the first 16 minutes. He was, and then his replacement is also great. So they do have strength and depth. Hopefully it's not going to be out for too long. I think I understand that they'll be disappointed, but they got a draw, and that's an away game for them. And away points, you win your rest of your home games, they're home and hosed.
Yeah, I think it's just with the dominance that they showed for the first, say, 40 minutes and the way they capitulated in the last 10, because they did. You know, they had a stranglehold on Cork and they let Cork back in. I think they will be disappointed.
Okay, so you think there could be some psychological impact of like a bit of doubt in their heads now, even when they are winning games?
I think you can't. Last year in Semple Stadium when Cork, beat them for a stick, it hasn't been that long ago that they were losing games and that they weren't organised. So they've done incredibly well in the league. They were exceptional against Cork for 40 minutes on Saturday night, and they allowed Cork back in. So you have to. There's doubt. There is.
Were you at the game?
I was in Oma.
I was going to say, so I'm opening the can of worms here, but the game wasn't on terrestrial television.
Well, it suited me because I was able to watch it on Gago.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah.
But look, for a game of that calibre, and there's so few games in the year that have that meat, and if you look at the 2 provincial football finals on Sunday, there wasn't any entertainment in them. I think RTE are really, really missing a trick here by not looking at those games and allowing those games to be showcasing the hurling, because now we've missed 2 games. We've missed the Clare and Limerick game as well.
There's more to come.
It's such a small window for the game to be showcased, and the Galway and Kilkenny games over the weekend were.
Far be it from me to defend RTE, right? But it's actually not their responsibility to showcase the game. It's the GAA's responsibility to showcase the game, and it's in RTE's interest to get as much money as they possibly can out of GAA Go, because they've made an investment in it, and it's just a business now. So what they've got to do is exploit, in Donal Logue's word, the investment to try and get that money back.
So you're saying the big games are the pay-per-view games,
exactly,
and that nobody's going to pay to see Sligo get beaten by Galway, is what you're saying.
Exactly. It's bad business, and the GAA and the president Larry McCarthy said people are happy enough now after COVID to pay for stuff. Maybe they're not. I don't know. Maybe
the coronation.
Maybe they got that wrong, but.
If we're looking at how many people attended the Cork games, 36,000 people in Cork on Saturday night. There was 13,000 people at Galway and Kilkenny a couple of weeks ago. That was on the telly. If you go to the game, then obviously there's an interest in seeing the game, and then tenfold interest countrywide. It's not physically possible for everyone to get to the games every weekend. The games, it's 9 weeks, it's 9 weekends, 11 weekends of hurling out of a 52-week year. Get your acting in order, lads.
Yeah, I think that there's a wider conversation to be had about promoting the game. Are you serious about promoting the game? Are you actually just delighted that there's 5 or 6 counties? It's going to be good for those 5 or 6 counties, and that's all we need to keep it alive and keep charging the big sponsorship deals. I feel a little bit like the GAA pays lip service to the whole notion of promoting hurling. A little bit, I would say.
I agree.
We're kind of scratching away at this, but the fundamental issue is that they're not really trying to grow the game significantly. They're happy with where it is. It's performing grand. Next problem. Like, that's what it feels like.
Why would they be happy where it is, though?
Well, why not? Because, like, Limerick are one of the greatest teams of all time. They had 30,000 in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. They had however many they had at the Gaelic Grounds the previous week. But
is it not embarrassing that you'd 9,000 people in Croke Park to watch Dublin Wexford?
They don't care, though.
The game on Saturday.
Should care. Like, that's embarrassing.
It's not particularly embarrassing. Like,
well, the game should have been in Parnell Park for starters. But
the Dubs wanted it in Croke Park. It turned out, you listen to them afterwards. They're like,
he said exactly what we thought he was going to say, which was, this is a young team. They don't have any, I suppose, skin in the game in Parnell Park. It isn't their fortress. So ultimately, they wanted to be in Croke Park. But 9,000 people.
I know.
One point as well. There were no Saturday game highlights this week or last week. Why does anybody? Because I do remember there being a massive announcement about there being a new Saturday game show on RTE. That was like one of their big kind of flagship things. Like, oh, we're great. We've got Saturday highlights
with Damien Lawler. I thought that was going to be a weekly thing. So.
And then they don't have Saturday highlights for the 2 weeks where the whole country's like, this game's pretty good. I must go and check out. Oh,
and then they showed the football before the hurling.
Wonder.
I don't know. I think it was nearly 10:30 last night before the hurling came on the TV again. So it was nearly 20 to 11.
A weeknight, yeah.
So it hasn't done anything for the game of hurling in the last week. All it might do is people might buy more papers because it's the only place you can read anything.
It's about to get much worse
with the Tailteann Cup.
Well, and not just the Tailteann Cup, but the Sam Maguire is actually going to be good. There'll be a good game every week, and that's all anybody's going to be talking about as the hurling championship careers towards the Munster final, All-Ireland quarterfinals, semi-finals, and the final. I'm sure will get its due regard, but it might not. I think hurling is being swamped by football, and I don't really think that within the organisation centrally they care enough about that. And I think that it'll be easy for us to have this kind of conversation about GAA Go. And for me, it's a bit of a sideshow. And I actually think hurling need to do more about it, and they need to talk about it themselves.
Yeah, I suppose
they haven't got their own house in order in some ways.
Well, if you look at the presidents previously, I suppose Nicky Brennan from Kilkenny was a big proponent of hurling, and Larry McCarthy is more football, I would say. Jarlath Burns, I suppose more football. Do we need and now Sean Kelly was football, but he loved his hurling, I think. So
hurling president and Gaelic football president. So what you're pitching?
Absolutely. There we go. Room for all.
Not the worst idea.
But there has to be some balance here, and there's not right now.
No, it's and I do think that the tsunami of football games that are coming, that are going to be evenly matched all around the country, like Markievicz Park, I think will be full for the Kildare visit, and rightly so. We should talk about Dublin Wexford, like the actual game itself. You were critical of Wexford in the league, and it's coming home to roost.
That league game, that first night out against Galway in the league, it was a horrible night, but the wide count was outrageous. And I think Niall Corcoran was interviewed at half time, and he pointed to the fact that they just weren't accurate enough. And then Saturday evening, Croke Park, 19 wides against Dublin. They came back from 5 points down 2 or 3 times and kept it a game, but ultimately, if you're hitting 19 wides, I think they had 51 shots to Dublin's 31 shots. So they were out shooting them, and 19 wides racked up. It's just not good enough for an inter-county team when Munster fare is so frenetic and you have Leinster just...
And then 51 shots to Dublin's 31, I think.
Yeah,
so it's not like they weren't shooting. It was the wides that killed them.
19 wides, lads, on a Saturday evening in Croke Park.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like they hoped, and hope isn't a tactic or a strategy, that they hoped that the injured players coming back would just fit in seamlessly and everything would be grand, but it didn't work out for them.
No, and look, I was in Páirc Uí Chaoimh for the Wexford and Cork game this year in the league, and Lee Chin that day I came in afterwards and said he was magic. Like, and I suppose they probably suffer in the fact that when he's not playing, the team can't get used to playing with him.
Exactly.
And Wexford just don't seem to find a rhythm, and I think Roy O'Connor is one of the best forwards in the game as well, so they do have scoring forwards, so to be racking up 19 points, and Conor MacDonald as well, like I'm naming players, and Charlie McGuckin this year has been brilliant as well. I just think if it's boiling down to accuracy, and we've heard that word a lot in the last couple of weeks, Waterford the same, is there too much tactics, and is it to go back to basics? We talk about Kerry football and we talk about Dublin football, and it's the kicking game. Well, it's the shooting game, lads. It has to be about the hurling, and I think maybe we're too tactical in hurling now. We're losing the basics.
They probably did well to get back to level a few times, even Wexford, regardless of all the wides. Probably should mention Donal Burke and his unbelievable
escapades. Yeah, I know that. Look, Donal is, I suppose, a once in a generational talent for Dublin GAA, and they're incredibly lucky to have him. This is a very young Dublin team, and Michael O'Donoghue, who's doing, I think it's a project. It has to be a project. Because
the progress from drawing with Antrim to this is fairly phenomenal, and that's one of those wins that they get, and it's just a sense of like, okay, we can actually build on this now, you know.
But that Antrim team is backboned by the Dunloy lads, and I've been watching them since November. They're coming to the end of their kind of, I suppose, spell. It's 6 or 7 months is what they had in them as a group, the likes of Neil McManus. I think those lads are tired now, and if you see the result, like against Kilkenny in the league, I think they lost by 7. And against Kilkenny at the weekend, it was a cricket score.
Yeah.
Kilkenny scored 5 goals. I think that Dublin team probably got the sting in the tail from Antrim, you know, and that's what they had left in them. So I don't know. I think Dublin are better than what they were in against Antrim, and I suppose that they're probably on an upward trend now. But it's not going to be enough, lads. Like Galway, Wexford, and one of the teams in Munster is going to lose out, and it's really disappointing because one of those teams in Munster is not worse than Dublin or Wexford.
No, I mean, they could fix this with some kind of wildcard playoff weekend where we're like everybody's, you know, it's proper old school championship.
Sure.
You know,
if the third place, third and fourth place in both was given a rattle at it.
It's just the fourth place in Munster versus the third place in Leinster, because we accept that on the basis of league. Blah 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 blah. We can work it out some way to make it fair.
I think the Munster lads would be happy with that. They'd be happy with a rattle as well. So
for sure.
Maybe that's what we'll decide. Yeah, a hurling president and a fourth place, third place playoff. Perfect.
We fixed it.
Well, I was going to say, Sarah's passion for the game and analysis is always class, says Sean. Hurling should just split from the GAA and not wait for them to grow the game. #live hurling. #joking, not joking.
I love that.
There's an idea.
Saudi Arabia, come on down. Your time is now.
Well, the lads were in Uganda, remember? If Taggy Fogarty was in Uganda a while back.
Right.
There's massive promotion going on there. There's less going on in Sligo. I think, actually, did Sligo have a good old run against Kerry?
Might have done, yeah. Decent.
Yeah, so I think the weekend had that gold on Saturday night in Archie, and outside of that, hurling had a light touch this weekend.
It's still 50-50 that one of Tip or Cork won't make it. Do you know? Close enough to it.
On the balance of probabilities now, you're looking at Tip getting through, having the acumen to get over the line in the last 2 games. Just they're just more mature, and we said that at the league. They're a little further along.
And so, how much of a disaster would it be for this young Cork team not to have an All-Ireland quarter-final to look forward to?
I think it would be seen as a failure in Cork first off. And that's what the issue is with the structure, is that this Cork team doesn't deserve to go out when you look at the competition in Leinster.
There's no obviously, is there patience in Cork if that happens?
On the basis of Saturday night's performance, yes, because I think it's stacked against Cork and Clare right now, in terms of what they have to do to get through. I think everyone's going to appreciate that one good team is going to go out. In other years, it wouldn't be justified, and people would not be happy with, giving up games or losing games. But you're talking, they might lose one game and end up going out.
But if they beat Clare in 2 weeks, they're through. But the problem is that's an Ennis.
And that's obviously Clare's fortress right now, and a very enjoyable place for them to go. But I don't think Cork will be afraid of going to Ennis, lads. That's and the older Cork players, the guys who were there since 2014, I suppose they owe Clare. They owe Clare one. I know Colm Galvin was on the radio last week, and I never forget him powering towards goal in 2013 and breaking all the Cork
PTSD.
marks. So I think that's It's a lot for both Cork and Clare and Tip, I suppose. But we're assuming that Limerick are going to.
Is that game on telly?
No idea.
No, I don't actually think that it is.
Right. Sarah, good stuff.
Thanks, lads.
Thanks a million for joining us. Here's some highlights on the OTB Podcast Network for you to get your teeth into. A massive GAA reaction across the course of the weekend. We also have a reaction to Bows and Rovers on Friday night. We've got Brian Kerr after the game yesterday and the Football Pod live. 2 full hours, including an incredible story about how the Kerry footballers dubbed Paddy Andrews Peanut. Because he'd been roasted so badly by Gooch Cooper in Croke Park. They were like, Marcus says, like, we didn't know who you were, but we knew who you were afterwards because we were calling you Peanut on the bus on the way down. Like, wow, Jesus, good story, which I may have butchered. You can follow OTB across all our social channels. Subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network. After the ads, Anthony Moyles first. Brian Kerr chats Evan Ferguson with Stephen Doyle.
And you mentioned Brighton there as well, Brian. As you said earlier, they're going to play tomorrow. They're at home against Everton. It's a 5:30 kickoff. There is some talk Evan Ferguson could make his return from injury in that game, which would be a huge boost for, I suppose, Irish football fans watching on. But for himself, having just signed that long-term deal with Brighton, how key do you think he could be if he is fit for Brighton in the last few games?
Well, I think it'll be an important boost for them, but not absolutely critical for them because they played so well without him in recent weeks. They brought in some new young players into the team who have had an amazing impact, really. And you know, I think managers want to have. I mean, he's been in the team as a starter since the World Cup. On a fairly regular basis. Obviously, the manager thinks he's the best player they have in that position when he's fitting well. So if he is fitting well, I would say he would start on the bench the next match, and then he might start the following game after that. If unless one of the other players steps up and produces magic to keep him out of the team, but. Obviously, it'd be better for Brighton if they have him available because they see him as very important player, a first choice, first 11 player when he's fit. That's what he's developed into.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
OTB Rugby.
It's what you believe in, and if you think it's going to work, then train it. There's no way as a coach you can say that I have an experienced rationale above my players on something like the wall. You know, it's really, let's see, does this work together? And then if you get a good vibe off it, let's bring it in. If you don't, all right, cut.
Subscribe to the Rugby Stream on the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
11 minutes past 9. You're very welcome back to OTB AM this morning. We're live with Gillette Labs. Got the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. Anthony Moyles is with us. Anthony, good morning to you.
Good morning, gents.
The Provincial Championships. They're doozies, aren't they? We love them. We love them. They are amazing.
The funny thing is, I saw someone saying, you know, compared to the excitement of the Leinster semi-finals last week, which was actually true, you know. So it's funny, you know. It's just one of these. You keep thinking, like, so the argument for Connacht is obviously that you would seed it somehow, or even potentially, you know, Munster. You know, but so you don't end up with a situation like you had yesterday, and you don't have one side stacked.
If you were seeding, maybe Cork would have just been slightly ahead of Clare on the basis of how the season finished. But like, there would have been years where Clare would have been the second seeds, and
should they have put the two provincial finals this weekend? You'd expect on paper will be much better than this week than the previous weekend. So could they have just put one to? I don't know.
Certainly Ulster will. I would fear. I hope Louth can because I think Dublin have potentially come back a bit, and I think that Louth team are better than probably a lot of people would give them credit for. But I still can't see it being, you know, anything but, you know, a 6 to 8 point beating. But the problem is everyone. Like, I don't know if you guys have this feeling, but everyone's just like, let's just get this out of the way.
Yeah,
provincials.
Yeah, you know that's a sad state of affairs. Like, it really is. It's just kind of like, okay, let's hurry this up. Can we please do it? So why not do that? Like, and then of course we're saying, well, do it earlier in the year, but also you don't want to be playing in complete drudge either. So I don't know. Do you condense it even more, or do you just get? Well, obviously the thing would be just get rid of it, but that's not going to happen.
Well,
like Ulster will hold on to that championship for as long as they can.
And the championship is fine. You can keep your championship. You just can't link it to the All-Ireland series. It should have no connection to what's coming next. And like, one of the big things about the league and us not being able to have the league as the championship was, what about the sponsors, Allianz? But Allianz are now sponsoring the football championship as well. So they're obviously, they're now centrally involved.
Yeah.
You could just run your provincial championships from St. Bridget's Day to St. Patrick's Day. You can make it a holy festival if you want. and then...
That'll take a lot of boxes, Ger.
And then you get into... your tiered championships like we have now. And if you're bad enough to be in the second tier, win it and get up to the first tier, and away we go. And that's like...
How long are we talking about tiers and fixtures?
20 years. 20 years. I found a running order for Off the Ball when we went live, and it was like splitting Dublin and... and
Plus ça change.
And it was... I mean, we should be getting back to splitting Dublin, by the way. But...
Yeah. I what was there to say about yesterday?
Matthew Tierney, do you want to start there?
He was good. He was good, yes. You know what? I thought Galway were okay. Like, again, and I seem to kind of be repeating this, that Joyce won't fall into, I think, the trap of thinking, geez, we're world beaters. Because if you watch the match, it was actually quite even the first 10 minutes. Galway got an unbelievable goal, which was a pass that just was one of those that, like, you literally couldn't have dropped it in better. It's up. The fullback is actually, he says, I think I have this. And it's like, oh, no, I don't have this. And he slips. And then there's the 6 is there. So they have cover. And even the finish was excellent. Like, he literally had to put it into a distinction. He only had one spot to go. But it was an unbelievable goal. So he kind of said, actually, Sligo were competing quite well up to that point. The goal, and then the next goal, which was just a complete blow up by Sligo. They're in control of the ball. They're coming out. They've slowed it down a little bit. They've actually could have moved it on. They're a little bit caught in two minds, and then they just make a massive error, and then bang, and that's it. Game over. That's it.
Yeah.
So, in those, and that is the difference between Division 4, 3, even 2 up to 1. We saw it last week with Down and Armagh. The difference in the nous, the difference in that little smarts of Armagh, who realised Down are a counter-attacking team, lots of pace. Lads, every time we lose the ball on the forward line, just a little foul. Just a foul. Just get across a guy, pull him back, little stop, make sure we stop it dead, and we get back. Just a simple little thing.
Stand in front of them.
Down didn't get the idea that actually we should restart this quite quick. Fellas going down, talking to the referee, kind of rolling around a little bit. And like, it wasn't just, some of them were quite physical fouls, which they kept consistently getting. But that's, again, just the smarts of Division 1, 2, 3 and 4.
Is that what it is? Because Enda McGinley kind of made a similar point in commentary yesterday. He was saying, the conditioning and the training and even the skill level between Division 1 and 4 isn't massive difference. Like, the Galway and Sligo players on those three things aren't massively different, but it is a little thing. It's nice, it's experience, it's playing against the top teams week in, week out.
It is. Well, look, at the top level, the skill level is
better.
It is better, right? And the ability to kick left and right, and the ability to hand pass left and right. So where an opportunity exists, like, I was watching the game yesterday. There's a great clip of obviously some of the backdoor cuts that Kerry did. They did. Paddy did a backdoor cut kick pass, which was pretty phenomenal. Like, usually you would do it by a hand pass. Player comes towards you, he doubles up, goes back, but you could actually see him. Like, he points to David and he says, "I'll stick this into you," and he just drops it in. Like, an unbelievable pass. How deft it was, but. You watch Sligo a couple of times where actually they had the opportunity to do it, but what happens is, as the man turns, another man has come across into a space. Now, that's a very, very small thing, but again, it's just coached. So Kerry, no, you do not go into that. You vacate that space. Again, they're just the small little things, but again, they're the difference between getting a goal or not. A hand pass that goes on the ground, a hand pass that's not being able to give because it's on a weaker side. So it is the skill level, but absolutely, then it's just those miscalculations, those errors, just sometimes just switching off a little bit, turning your back on a ball, kind of. Even yesterday, I don't know if you saw it, but there was a kind of a contentious free that Clare thought they got from a kick out. Don't know if you saw that one before the second goal, and the Jamie Malone has it and he drops it and just gives it to the Kerry guys, and then bang, 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 goal.
Yeah.
rather than running back.
Colin Collins speaking with Tommy afterwards, and you can hear that in the podcast. He was very sore about that one. Now he did point out, this sounds like sour grapes, but like what, they couldn't see any reason for the free to be given, and there's an inconsistent. I hate talking about the referees, but because we end up talking about it in the League of Ireland, we end up talking about it in Premier League. It's like quality of refereeing in every sport. It's very difficult, and everybody always thinks it's terrible, but it's inconsistent at the moment.
Well, there's the inconsistencies of it. I know hurling is a completely different game. Okay, absolutely, because you have a stick in your hand, right? But I think there's most definitely a switch going on in football that the teams are understanding who the referees are and how they ref the game, and then they know this is as I said, top 6, top 8. I'm not saying most teams are doing it, but the top 6, top 8 are definitely saying we can take advantage of this referee in a certain way. So either A, they don't really like too much physicality on the ball. They will watch, say, inside forwards, and how they're being defended, because some referees will actually watch, they'll see, and some referees are very hard on, if you pull or drag inside, and they'll give frees, where some don't. Some watch the ball, some run in and actually take up the area of the D. So there are inconsistencies in it, and I think there's inconsistencies then, Ger, on the level of intensity that is brought to games. Like even yesterday, and I know it's hard, right, because there is a deficiency in all of that, as we said, about the skill level and all that stuff. But there's some games that the fire is like it's going to be lit, and then all of a sudden it's just extinguished because there's so much blowing. Yeah, there's so much blowing. And you're kind of going, oh Jesus, and you get the sense that if it's an Ulster Championship match, it's kind of like, let it go. And you're kind of going, how did he not get a free there? But then it's kind of like, actually, well, it's Ulster Championship, and Munster Championship in the hurling. Skin and hair flying. Yeah. And it's kind of like, it's a given. Yeah. But it shouldn't be a given. So there has to be, it is a tricky thing. Like some people have complained in the last number of years about Meath football that has gone soft. And back in the day, like how championship matches were refereed in the county were literally skin and hair flying. Like, I mean, if you got out of there with your head on your shoulders after scoring 5 or 6 points, you would walk onto the county team and you were ready for anything. You were ready for the dubs on Leinster final day. And now it's kind of like, well, it's being refereed differently, and therefore, and I remember Andy McEntee a couple of years ago was saying that he actually met the referees. He said we need to start kind of increasing the level of physical. So look, there's other things, but it doesn't necessarily lend itself to a massive passionate game with lots of intensity.
No, and we end up with the games we had at the weekend, and look, maybe the refereeing is something we'll come back to later in the summer. Hopefully we won't.
Hopefully we don't need to, because you have to let games flow.
Yeah.
There's not. I'm not talking about taking the heads off fellas here, but there's a lot of players, I feel, that if I come in to tackle you, Shane, as soon as I put my hand in, fellas are bang down. And they're buying those frees.
It is simulation, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff of, say, and especially if you're set up in a defensive wall. If I come at speed and I get a pop pass off you, and as soon as I hit that run, if I go down, it's in an instant. It's quite difficult for the referee to see, but it's free in.
Yeah. Or sometimes stuff. Some referees will let that go, and they'll let several of them go. And then that you can actually foul at the end and get away with it. So that's the bit where
But look, would it have helped the game? I think Clare would feel bitterly disappointed, because actually Clare were way below par. Yeah. They were way below par. They were like startled earwigs. I just think the enormity of it, I don't know what it was, but they didn't look at all like the team that they were, and it wasn't even like that Kerry were massively pressuring them. I think Kerry were saying, listen lads, if you want to play, that's okay, you play, score 2-10 because we'll score 4-12.
And again, the turnovers were key. I think they scored something like 2-3, 2-5 off it. Colin Collins was saying that they weren't actually under that much pressure. The ball was just being given cheaply to them, and he didn't understand why that was happening. Having said that, right, in previous years they would have lost this, gone into the qualifiers, straight one knockout. Now at least they are going to be playing in the Ulster Football Championship. They've got Monaghan, the
Donegal
and the beaten finalists in...
No, the winners of Ulster.
Oh, the winners of Ulster. Sorry, of course. Yeah.
That's a tough group for Clare.
That's a tough group.
And Clare have to go to Clonus as well. So,
as we said, welcome to the Ulster Championship, Clare.
I'd say they fancy their chances against Donegal.
I think anyone would at the moment.
Do you know?
Yeah.
Well, it's a great reset for them. You know, they can go back, they can really have a good look at it and say, right, bang, 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 error. You know, this is what came of those errors, and actually it was all in our control.
Yeah.
Yes, there was moments of brilliance from Kerry, and Kerry were trying things. You could notice that yesterday, Ger. I thought they were trying things. Like, you could see some moves. If you watch Moynihan's goal, the move, this is the one that we're talking about. He's actually out by, I can't remember who puts the ball across, but someone flashes a long ball across and he takes off, and it's a planned move. Geaney gets it, looks up, pops it into him, but you could see it's a kind of a basketball move, but of course accentuated a bit in that they were clearing the zone right in front of him, and he was cutting, slicing right through for another ball to come in over top. You can see Mike Quirke's hands all over this. You know, you really can. And they're trying stuff. They're trying stuff in that forward line. I'd say to put it in the locker and go, yeah, okay, we have that one for later on if we need to. But look, yeah, Clare will have to regroup. But you know what? I was impressed by Sligo. Sligo are a team and are a county that, again, resources, player pool, but they are, look at the under-20s. What are they doing? They're all pointing in the right direction. And, you know, Galway are...
Yeah,
what Galway are, and okay, but they'll say to themselves, you know what?
If they beat Kildare at home, they'll probably progress.
Oh yeah,
to and have another game after.
Almost guaranteed if they beat Kildare at home.
Yeah,
like that's largely a winner takes all from that group.
Yeah,
in a way, because you'd expect the other teams in the group to cause those Sligo and Kildare difficulties on the basis of the form that we've seen so far.
Yeah.
And Sligo have them at home, and they've got a great record against them, and obviously the under-20 game will happen, I think, in between. So Clare have Donegal at home as well
in the first game.
Yeah,
and then they go to Clonus, and then they play the Ulster winner in the final game.
Now, maybe Donegal could lose that game and still cause trouble for other teams at Ulster because it's Ulster.
Yeah, they've had time to kind of, you know, reset as well, Donegal. You know, it hasn't been last week. You know, they've gone away, they've licked the wounds. I would imagine there's a lot of soul searching going on. My only worry would be Donegal have a habit of hitting the red button and just saying bang, imploding.
Yeah.
Right. So could lads be booking tickets to the States and already had conversations about that and saying, listen, I'm out of here because this isn't going to get any better.
It's the same with Tyrone and Mayo. Would you prefer to be a squad that has that massive gap of 5 weeks before the group stages, or would you rather be a Clare or Sligo that play right up until a couple of weeks before?
It's a tricky way. I think it all is down to the environment that you're in. So I think if you're in a Donegal environment with what's going on top, that's a toxic environment.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're probably saying to yourself, is this going to get any better? You can stick as many sticky plasters as you want on that. But like, I would be very worried about Donegal. Like, I think if Donegal doesn't arrest the situation, what's happening, you could see them slide big time, you know, and you could have a divergence between Sligo. And again, it goes back to county boards. It goes back to the direction of a county, which is, of course, is derived from your county board and your ethos and your vision. But you look at the teams over the last while who are doing well in that. Yeah. Down, Derry, Sligo, you know, teams that are saying, well, this is where we want to go. This is all the things we're putting in place, and it's coming to the fore. Yeah. And Kildare, to be fair to Kildare, I know they had a tricky league, but you know, like you're saying, Kildare's star has massively risen over the last number of weeks. It has to have. Well, within Leinster, you know, they pushed Dublin all the way. They could have won that game. They certainly could have taken something out of it.
And the under-20s,
the
under-20s beating Dublin after extra time and then coming back from the dead against Down. These are not things that we as Kildare fans have seen that often in our history. And so, you know, it's coming on the back of an under-20 team last year that reached the final, and it's coming off the back of Jimmy Hyland's under-20 team 3 or 4 years ago.
There you go, 3-5, isn't it?
It's not bad, yeah. It's a real sign. And here's the thing: if they'd actually beaten Mayo last year when they should have beaten Mayo, then everybody would be saying they've made a quantum leap forward. And they used the league this year to blood some players, and then they run the Dubs close, and all of a sudden, but you know,
quite often that quantum leap forward, and it's funny how we relate to things and results. But that quantum leap forward is one game. But it's not one game, if you get me. Well, it could be even longer, you know. But it is kind of,
it shows up.
Correct. It just is typified by one particular result, and everyone goes, you know, there they are. But there's so much work goes on, obviously, to get to that point.
Well, with McGeeney, they hammered Meath in a qualifier, I think, by scoring 4 goals, and then they beat Monaghan the next day, or maybe they beat Monaghan first and then Meath the next day, and then, you know, I was like, oh, actually, this is it now. This team has a very clear identity, having crapped out every year in the Leinster Championship, and So yeah, I think that's why we're going to see that. Some team is going to be that team that actually comes together and forms and storms their way through to an All-Ireland semi-final. We don't expect it.
Yeah.
At this stage, you'd say, no, the All-Ireland semi-final is relatively fixed. We know 3 of the 4, and then it's up to Derry to show us that they're still there, or somebody to knock them off.
Or Armagh,
Or Armagh.
Yeah. Galway, you know.
You're not penciling them in just yet?
There's more strength and depth than last year, it would appear.
They do. But again, I wouldn't necessarily read too much into yesterday as well. Tierney's performance was kind of... I tell you what I wanted to look at yesterday, and I didn't really see it from them. There was a lot of individualistic type of scores. Tierney kicked some scores where you kind of go, wow. He just cut in off and he just bang with his left foot. The goals...
Yeah,
there wasn't massively, like, Burke got a few nice intricate kind of scores. Walsh was obviously ill. Why they played him, I think, is quite a strange decision. But anyway, and Comer did his usual, but there wasn't a fluidity in their game. I thought Kerry were more fluid in an attacking sense, and you could see that they were trying different things, as I said before. But yet Galway, I thought it was quite individual, right? Now, they scored whatever they scored, so of course there was some, good play with Kelly coming forward and all that stuff. But it's when the squeeze really comes on that forward line. That's my big question.
Well, maybe without Peter Cook and his heads of football, it mightn't have looked as good yesterday, because he was heavily involved in a lot of the good stuff.
Heavily involved, and I think he really actually came to the fore yesterday a bit more than most, and he's most definitely, like, Conroy has been there a long time, and I don't think Conroy is now a 70-minute man. I think he's a 45 minute man, and then you need someone out in that engine room. So yeah, he's put the hand up big time, but I'm just not yet convinced. Mayo are doing the usual.
Well,
Mayo in the long grass.
They have a big game in Killarney. Now, it's not that big a game because Mayo could lose 2 of their games in their round robin and still qualify, but
there's going to be some big scalps. I think there's going to be 1 or 2 big ones in that. The best thing about the round robin is you need to get those big games first. The big games that matter. And I know you're saying, well, Mayo Kerry will be able to pick, but it's still psychologically, that's a big. If Mayo turn Kerry over,
well then, then.
And if you can top your group and avoid that second place third, because in those second place third games, there's going to be big teams getting knocked out. I think, because a lot of big teams are going to finish second, and those teams in third could be Monaghan's or Roscommon's or Kildare's
in the preliminary quarter-final.
Final. Well, whatever it's called. But there's going to be some big games, so you want to top these groups.
You want it nice and easy.
Straight to the quarterfinals.
And next week's going to be, I think, looking forward to that. That's, as I said, a tactical. That's going to be there's a lot of X's and O's going on this week in both camps in Armagh and
it's a big game for Armagh, just to keep showing us that they can be consistent and can compete at this level, because if they go away against Derry, then there's a flakiness in them. Like last year, going out on penalties, I think Galway were actually quite superior to them, and they were lucky enough to get to the penalties. And this year, obviously, the league didn't show us anything, and that was on purpose. It looks like now they're much better than their league performance. But if they were to lose this game and Derry just handle their business, you'd be very concerned about the rest of the season for Armagh. But if they were to beat Derry, or if they were to at least put in a performance for the whole game, you're like, okay, well then they are in the top. They're just on the fringes of that top 4. I did want to just ask your opinion on all of the dubs rounding on Glen Ryan over the last week. It was very interesting, wasn't it? It was like this orchestrated campaign of everybody who has any platform in the national media going, shut up, Glen. I was like, oh, that's interesting. You're all very touchy. Oh, very touchy, the dubs, weren't they, over the last week?
Yeah.
They're talking about all these things. Like, home advantage is worth 3 points in every sport ever. You have home advantage. So however the argument was made, you can try and pick it apart by like, oh, well, page 14 he said this and that's stupid. It's like, fair enough, whatever. Be the lawyers if you want to be, but actually Dublin have home advantage and it's bullshit. Just admit it, it's bullshit. We'll go wherever, but it's bullshit.
He who protests too much.
There was a bang at protest too much, wasn't there?
Well, there was a very serious bang. Like, because it's there's no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. You can dress it up however you want. It's very, very obvious for, I've played in there against them in there plenty of times, and there is no doubt about it. And actually, even me, we would have felt that Croke Park was pretty familiar to us, So we got to play in there a good bit. So you were kind of going, actually, yeah, well, Dale, it's definitely their home, but it's kind of, we're okay here. Did I play in, Fitzgerald Stadium a lot? A couple of times. Or Porky Creek, so Croke Park was most definitely the second busiest, most frequented venue for me. And I still would have felt, actually, this is nice, it's familiar. I know the story here. As I said, I know where I put my bag. I know all the different spots. I know where I can kick from, not kick from. You can just understand it a bit better.
Well, I think Sligo's neutral game, I'm right in saying, is the Dubs. So can you imagine dragging Sligo over to Croke Park to play Dublin in a quote-unquote neutral match?
Well, would you break 10,000 on that?
The chance. That has to be on a provincial ground in the middle of Leinster.
Notwithstanding the familiarity isn't about home advantage. Home advantage is about all the other things that come with it. Refereeing decisions go your way because you've got more supporters and blah 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 blah. But there was the touchiness from all of them. None of them were like, yeah, fair cop. We have had home advantage. It's a bit ridiculous. The organisation has sorted out. It's like, he shouldn't be saying this. He comes across really bad. Like, well, screw you. Who are you to tell me what to say?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
A bit of gaslighting going on from these,
Yeah. Well, look, there is no.
Must have struck a little chord there, Glenn. Keep going.
Yeah, he definitely did.
Siege mentality has begun. Yeah,
the rematch is going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, it will be. Well, you never know. Mickey is lying in wait. And I don't think Desi. We spoke about this rotation that was going on, and most certainly was going on. I'm still not yet convinced. I know we were saying last week, Dubs, or a couple of weeks ago, they're bad. Okay, leash. Kildare showed chinks, or they showed up that there is definitely frailties there.
Michael Fitzsimons isn't in the squad yet.
They still don't have a Bernard Brogan. They still don't have that. Right, Dean has probably dropped down a peg or two. Costello is still yet to really take the mantle. Okay, Con, and they're saying a big ball into him, absolutely, but he's not a Bernard Brogan. He's not that type of player that you can sling it in and just know 1-on-1 he is going to do what he needs to do to get us that score. So once you crowd out, which Kildare do, and which plenty of teams will do from now on,
Vicky Hart will.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, that rematch is in Newbridge as well, Kildare Dublin. So that's going to be.
It's not.
Is it not?
No,
sorry, it's not. Of course.
Yeah, Newbridge is gone, so I don't know where it'll be. But so it's. I think.
Croker.
There's definitely questions to be asked.
Yeah, and long may they continue to be asked as opposed to being shut down by the former Dublin players.
But the good thing is, they still have the 3-point advantage.
Of course.
Exactly. I mean, it's just written down. It's like all the science shows it, but no, the music, excuses. Whatever. All right, fair enough. Very touchy, though, for you've got the biggest medal collection in the history of the game.
Yeah, enjoy it.
It hasn't been tarnished.
Yeah.
It isn't being tarnished. All right. Good stuff.
Cheers, lads.
Thanks very much for that. On tomorrow's show, Shane and Adrian will bring you more football, hurling and rugby, Jasmine Baba and what makes Jude Bellingham so special, plus plenty more besides. Right now, the best of the Sunday pay-per-view. Have a marvellous Monday.
Manchester City will not just beat Real Madrid in their Champions League semi-final, they'll blow them away. So I know most of us instinctively feel City will do that, but then very quickly we say, well, geez, though, Real Madrid in this competition are a curious beast. But Rooney's not too worried, really. A year ago, Madrid put City out of the competition at this stage, but the dynamics are different now. City are better at the back. They're a more patient team who in the Champions League have been playing like they've learned from the European experiences. But the biggest change is Erling Haaland, of course, he says. And he says of last year, where in the second leg of the Bernabeu, City conceded twice in stoppage time and then early in extra time to blow a 2-goal lead, that did not tie in with the previous pattern of exits under Guardiola. There was no pattern at work. Guardiola did not overthink. At the Bernabeu, I thought City's performance was incredible. Pep got his tactics spot on. The team just had a mad 5 minutes. It does happen sometimes. And he goes on to talk about how Haaland have made City not just scary with the ball, but also super scary without the ball. They can kill you on the break. And then he's pretty effusive about the much maligned Ancelotti. And he does this very well in his columns, actually. He brings you back into the guts of 15 years at Manchester United, where he just has a whole array of games to bring you experiences of. So he talks about playing Milan in 07. Ronaldo was playing off the left for us, and for them Cafu bombing forward from the right hand side. Every time Cafu went upfield, Gattuso would step in from the middle of the pitch to backfill the gap, where he would foul and frustrate Ronaldo until he nullified the threat. And I remember thinking what a clever ploy that was. So again, Ancelotti is more than just a raised eyebrow and a make you feel good kind of a merchant. And as a final point, I think you have to put City up there with United's 99 treble winners as the best Premier League team of all time if they win the Champions League, as he expects them to do. And he says ROH United team were also a great side, but the way City dominate opponents and make it look so easy so often while constantly fighting on all fronts is way beyond what we did. So as much as it pains him, as he says in the piece, Rooney absolutely effusive about this Manchester City team.
Yeah, I mean, he's goading fate there by writing off Real Madrid so resolutely before a Champions League game. I mean, we did this on a kind of a bi-weekly basis last season or last spring, and Madrid made fools of everyone. But it is hard, I know. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. It is hard to see City not winning this and then going on to win the Champions League.
Yeah.
I mean, Rooney's point is very interesting as to how Haaland has changed them. So at the start of the season, we were looking at Haaland and like City basically weren't passing him the ball, and you're wondering, well, they don't know how to play with this guy. And Jonathan Wilson has a good line in his Observer piece that appears in the Sunday Independent that it's become a kind of creative tension. And Bernardo Silva touched on it when he was talking after the quarter-final win. It's just like, we realise that we don't always need to have the ball. Like, City destroyed Bayern really, but didn't have the majority of the possession for the first time in God knows how long. And Silva said, we know we don't need to have the ball anymore because they've brought in that kind of, Liverpool like terrorising, counter-attacking thrust with Haaland. So now it is kind of interesting, most managers have a sell-by date usually because they can't move on from their great ideas, where Guardiola, we think, is this ultimate philosopher, an ultimate idealist, an ideologue, but he's kind of changed how he plays as well. And where City, to go back to Zadok the priest, I assume it wasn't booed at the coronation back in the 1950s, but the Man City fans have been booing that anthem for years, and there's been this very strange relationship between City and the Champions League. Do they really love this competition and embrace it? There seems to be almost a status anxiety about them in the Champions League in the early years, but Haaland loves it. It was only a little thing, but after the Leipzig game or after the Bayern game in the quarterfinals, he tweeted like nothing but love for this competition. No Man City player or anyone associated with the club could say that about the Champions League. So maybe that gets them over the line.
That point as well about Pep Guardiola being, an ideologue, but obviously more versatile. Like in previous years, the trope has been, well, Pep is overthinking this and that's why they don't win the Champions League, because they're going away from the thing that has got them that far and he's tinkering too much. When I watched them the other night against Arsenal last week, and it was such a fundamental change to how they usually play. They played with two pivots, with Rodri and Gundogan in a much deeper role. De Bruyne played literally off Haaland. It was almost like watching Robbie Keane playing off Niall Quinn. Expecting that Arsenal's midfield and two would press up, and the amount of ball that they got in behind Arsenal was absolutely, because they knew that Arsenal were going to try and defend on the halfway line. So there was an example of the most important Premier League game of the season, if you want to put it that way. He made a very fundamental change to the team and it paid off. So I think it's one of those things you always notice when it doesn't come off, but you have to kind of pay tribute and recognise as well when it does come off. Just on the Wayne Rooney piece as well, just looking at it from a kind of boring journalism eye, editors will always tell you to make sure you have something very snappy and a strong line and early on in the piece. He goes all out here in the first line of the piece by saying Manchester United will not just beat Real Madrid in the Champions League, they'll blow them away, and then he ruins it by saying, of course I may be wrong.
That's true. That was a Freudian slip on your part. Are you a Manchester United fan?
No.
All right, because you said Manchester United will beat Real Madrid there.
No, I'm definitely not Manchester.
Interesting. Let's go to Colin Boyle and check in at the Connacht football final. 30 minutes on the clock. Galway 2-6, Sligo 4 points. So the bright start from Sligo has been punctured here, Colin.
Yeah, it was punctured after 9 minutes, Joe. A Galway goal, a long ball over the top with the Sligo full back. Eddie McGuinness just got the flight of that ball all wrong. Read it, came out in front, the ball went over the top to Damien Comer, who read it brilliantly, and he fit past the ball across to Matthew Tierney. He slipped it to the net. It was the same two players involved for the second goal as well. Comer intercepted a crossfield ball for Sligo just around the midfield area, ran all the way in and hand passed it across to Tierney, and again he was there to finish the goal chance. Outside of that, there's been two Shane Walsh frees, a fisted point from Killian McDade. That's the second member of that Galway half back line to get a fisted score as well, and another fisted point from Matthew Tierney. Sligo's solitary response has been a 45 from Niall Murphy. So after all the good play for the first 5 or 6 minutes where they scored 3 points, they've only a point scored in the last 28 minutes of play, and this is all with the win, Joe. So you really feel that this game is only going one way.
You sure do. Okay, thanks Colin for the time being. So Galway in total control against the breeze as well in the Connacht football final. We're here with Gavin Cooney of the 42 and Conor McKeown of the Independent as well. What strikes me about City, and of course you have to note the 115 charges looming as the context, but in Haaland, and I think as well in Grealish, I've never enjoyed watching them more as a team. It's just a touch more alive than
they're slightly different to
possession brilliance.
They're slightly different to the kind of preeminent teams of the various different eras, insofar as they are that bit more flexible. Yeah. You know, like their two wingers aren't pacey wingers. You know what I mean? Like Grealish is obviously a very good dribbler and he's very penetrative, but he always cuts inside on his right foot. And the same with Mahrez on the far wing. There's no kind of real speedsters there, and the control that they have over the ball when Rodri in particular gets it. But even like Akanji, like I'm not sure that anybody else was interested in buying Akanji, and all of a sudden he arrived into the City team. And he's keeping Kyle Walker out of the team. So like you'd always view these things in retrospect and say, well, obviously you're going to win everything with all these great players, but I think there's definitely a touch of that Pep Guardiola has made a lot of them great players.
Yeah.
I was reading that book about Barcelona recently, and we think of Sergio Busquets as being one of the great sort of defensive midfield pivots of all time, and Pedro that was on that team as the quick winger, but they were languishing in the Barcelona reserves and the B team. They weren't going to get anywhere till Guardiola came in and said, this is going to be my style, this person. They both have a a skill set that can play a role in that team, and sometimes you kind of don't forget that there's more coaching and management that goes into creating really good sides than simply just talent accumulation.
Yeah, but I did like that against Arsenal they boot the ball long to Haaland. It just added a certain variety to their play which wasn't there in recent years for me. And it's funny, I was talking to somebody who knows Jack Grealish, and this is not speaking out of turn overly, it's not dramatic or anything, but Grealish was talking about what Pep wants from him, and the line was, I have to stay on that left hand. He divides the pitch up into various quadrants, I suppose. I have to stay on that left hand side. If I come out of that, he'll take me off.
Yeah,
just take me off. But once I get the ball, I can do whatever I want.
That's interesting. Yeah, because you'd imagine that the manager that encourages free expression and allows attacking players to reach their potential will be like, you're smarter than me. You go, you do you, Jack.
Smell it, Jack. You do what you got to. No.
Whereas you have to follow exactly what I tell you. It's kind of an almost counterintuitive way of thinking about creativity. But look, Grealish, I didn't really think he was going to reach these levels. I didn't think he was as... I was surprised that he joined City in the first place. I thought he was more of a Man United player than a Man City player, to be honest. And he did kind of struggle last season, but he's been... if you're picking a team of the year, it's hard not to put Rashford to the left of that front three. But Grealish in the last few months, I think he's done one of the best
thoroughbred players. And said, I'll break him. Might take me a year, but I'll break him.
It was. I watched the Man City All or Nothing before, and I was struck by Mikel Arteta when he was doing a bit with the wingers, and he said that he hated the ball from the full back up the line to the winger because the winger has nowhere to go, and he said that the defender is then on the bum, as he said, of the winger. And ever since watching that, anytime I watch Arsenal, if you look at when the ball is played to Bukayo Saka, he's always coming off the sideline.
Well, the best example being at Anfield.
Yeah, and it's impossible not to see it now because it's in your head. And you can wow the people whose company you're in with your football knowledge by saying, wait till you see he'll come in off.
If you think that goal where he comes off the wing and Robertson slips, that's how that goal happens. And I would say a defining aspect of Republic of Ireland wing play over the last 20 years has been for full back to pass it straight up the line to winger with defender up his backside and we're going nowhere.
Yeah.
But like, how blessed we are, because this is like, that's a few minutes there on what a genius Guardiola is. But we're also watching the league next door to us on our televisions that has Sam Allardyce, an even greater mind.
I know.
You know.
Well, indeed. Just to mention, by the way, page 2 of the Sunday Times to finish off in that Man City game yesterday and Man City at large. Keane's Leeds stint offers him chance at a reboot, says Paul Rowan. So it's there's nothing revelatory as such in the piece. It touches on Keane and the $250,000 a year from the FAI and a sense of the limbo that he was in, perhaps from a managerial point of view. The Leeds stint is a much needed reboot, and the door to him being Ireland manager at some point is not closed. But the man who blazed a trail now has some catching up to do, is the closing line of the piece. And he got the call on Wednesday, courtesy of Sammy Lee's jury duty. I mean, it's just like... She's like, this is all so weird. But you
Coronation Street stuff. Like.
So Sammy Lee can't be alongside Big Sam because the judge is screwing him, frankly. And so Keane got the call. He was on the flight as soon as he got the call Wednesday morning and arrived over. And so, it's a bit of a chance for him. Boy, was he excited to be on the same dugout as Pep.
Yeah, I don't think anyone could have watched that game on television for more than 5 minutes and not realised that Robbie Keane was part of the Leeds coaching staff. He was obviously to the forefront of the entire drama by the touchline. It's a good opportunity for Keane. He really wants to be a manager, and I'm very excited and very interested to see how it goes. The FAI thing for Keane was a bit of a mess for all parties. I don't think Keane did anything wrong in that scenario, but it was a bit of a mess. But he wants to be a manager. He had probably his own reasons for not going and taking the plunge in the last 6 months or so. But I'm really interested to see how it goes, because the journalist in me admires Robbie Keane's contacts book. It is unrivaled. You know, he's got access to like all of the great coaching minds in Europe. Really, like he spent time at Real Madrid with Ancelotti. He obviously knows Modric from his time at Spurs, and now he's on this UEFA committee of football geniuses. Basically, this board of football heads, like Mourinho is on it, Vieira is on it, Benitez is on it. All these guys, Maldini's on it, I think, as well. All these guys who are who are basically the UEFA brains trust and going to feed into UEFA how they should change the game, etc. So Keane is keeping rarefied company on that. So he's got a hell of a lot of ideas to tap into when he does take the plunge into management, and I'm really looking forward to seeing when he does it.
It will be interesting to see if Leeds manage to stay up. They've Newcastle next, then they've West Ham, and they have Spurs at Ellen Road. 4 points might be enough. It's certainly doable. Will Leeds look at Big Sam and Robbie and say 3-year deal? Or what happens to Sammy Lee? Surely the case can't go on forever.
It might.
It can't be on jury duty.
It could be an
forever.
OJ job.
Just some Kafkaesque disaster that keeps Sammy Lee out of frontline football.
You just have to say, though, to go from Marco Bielsa to Sam Allardyce is a wild jump.
Madness. It's the most bizarre industry.
But this season in particular has been particularly dumb. It's not just Leeds. Like, it's most of the clubs in the league have completely lost the run themselves this year. You know, money makes people desperate. And I remember there's an old Sepp Blatter line that football makes people mad. It's a pretty heady mix. I think Leeds and many Premier League teams.
It'd be a decent level shortlist for the biggest shambles in the Premier League this year. Like between Chelsea and Spurs.
Chelsea are runaway leaders.
Yeah, well, Spurs managed to do a good harakiri there towards the end of the season as well.
But I think the moment when Frank Lampard sat in the Bernabeu and couldn't explicitly or categorically deny that he was given the job on the word of James Corden.
Yeah, just deny that.
I feel that was the moment when Todd Boehly, the great disruptor, I think you've disrupted the wrong thing, pal.
Did you watch the James Corden finale to his 8 years chat show?
They smashed up his stage? Or
yeah, did you watch the
I saw
show?
clips.
I mean, I watched it all, intending just to think it was terrible. God, it was bloody good.
Was it, Jim?
Oh my goodness.
My sister's just back from New York with her boyfriend, and they said they went straight to the restaurant where the guy, I can't remember the name, is it called Manifest or something like that? And they went straight to that restaurant because they said fair play to your man for calling out, and started the ball rolling. Eventually got James Corden kicked out of...
It seems that way. Balthazar,
yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Listen, I hope she was well behaved, social media these days. It was so good. There was a 15-minute skit with Tom Cruise. Again, you would think, this won't be good. There's just not enough likability here in this duo. It was very funny. They starred The Lion King for a night. Surprised the audience. They rehearsed. And,
who played who? You don't know?
They did... Tom Cruise was the warthog.
Timon and Pumbaa.
Yes. And Corden was Timon.
Oh, right.
They sang Hakuna Matata.
Okay.
And then revealed, and the audience lost their minds.
Amazing.
It was really good.
Yeah, in fairness to Corden, I'm not as big a fan. but the carpool karaoke with Paul McCartney. Now, you might argue that anyone could have made that good TV.
I thought he was very good in Gavin and Stacey.
Very good.
Yeah, but after that, I think he lost the run of himself.
Well, the carpool karaoke is with Adele, and again, it's top.
Ah, I haven't seen that.
It's really good. She reveals she wrote a song for him because in 2020 he had hit rock bottom. He started crying in carpool karaoke.
Oh.
He was down with the show and down with the internet, as he put it. The snipers like Conor McKeown online writing mean things, and he got very emotional.
Yeah.
So kind of he won me back over just.
And all the while freelancing as Chelsea sporting director.
Well, indeed, I was like, how did we get onto that? Okay,
what a character arc.
Yeah, just so we'll finish off the football scene as we started with it. There's a really good piece, Gav, you picked it out on the Milan derby, which is going to be the other semi-final. Fear of losing stalks a city and its two fallen giants. Jonathan Liu here. It seems like he's gone over to Milan and spoken to various people. Interestingly, there's just a concrete sense that Inter will absolutely win. So there's a club employee who wants to remain nameless for obvious reasons because he works for Milan, and he says the final will be Manchester City against Inter, he declares glumly. In this moment, Inter are stronger. Only Pep Guardiola can help us, is the AC Milan verdict.
I think Real Madrid are saying the same thing, by the way.
Okay. And so Jonathan writes, I don't, in a weird way, I never delved too much into the Milan-Inter rivalry, so this was a really interesting piece. The Milan-Inter rivalry is a strange one. There is no real ideological, sociological or geographical divide between them. They even share a stadium. Their fans are pretty evenly spread across the city. Neighbourhoods and workplaces and schools, and often families, are divided along tribal lines. For all the fire and fervour of the two clubs' ultra groups, derbies generally pass off with very little incident. There was no hate in the Milan derby, Andrei Shevchenko once said. And he charts their recent falls. So Champions League crown for Milan 07, the treble under Jose for Inter in 2010. But the seeds of the decline were already been sown. Berlusconi, Moratti dynasties who owned the two clubs were beginning to scale down their ambitions just as everybody else was scaling up. In 15-16, for the first time in 60 years, which is quite something, neither side represented in Europe. A revolving door of owners put Milan on the brink of bankruptcy, and Inter struggled and stagnated under the new ownership of the Sunning Group. Managers, mediocre players came and went. Inter went 6 years without Champions League football, Milan 7. And last few years, a bit of a revival. Inter won the league under Conte in 21, Milan won in 22, and there are signs that both are starting to come out of the financial wilderness. Inter, possible sale in the summer. Milan have an American private equity group, Redbird Capital, and there's a sense that neither club is going to take over the world anytime soon, but things are getting better. That was just a really good piece.
That was great.
It sets up the semi-final very nicely.
That was perfectly, yeah. The writing is class. I've always wondered about that rivalry between Milan and Inter because just so many players seem to go from between both clubs. You never really, maybe that happens a lot more in Italy, but you never really see that. Like think of pigs' heads being thrown at Luis Figo, etc. So that was really good. It tapped into that, that horror of facing your biggest rivals in a massive game because you might lose to them. That's the worst, where mutually assured destruction looks like maybe the best possible outcome here. But it is sadly setting up a kind of a dog of a game next Wednesday. Small wonder Alessandro Nesta, veteran of the classic 03 semi-final that Milan won in away goals, is predicting an ugly conservative game. The two teams fear each other, he said. But no, it's a great piece.
There's something about AC Milan though, and maybe it's my vintage because of Gazzetta Football Italia and how prominent they are in the kind of nostalgia and football psyche. The world seems like a better place when AC Milan are in the Champions League semi-final for some reason. It seems like all is right with the world. Going back even to the team, the Marco van Basten, Ruud Gullit, Marcel Desailly team, that seemed for people of my age, I think that's nearly the quintessential big European team. The great, was it 4-0 they beat Barcelona? Was it the 94 Champions League final? And it always felt like a matter of when rather than if they would kind of come back to this stage. But they are slightly miffed that it's a private American equity firm that has helped get them here. Like your faith in kind of this whole, the romantic part of you that thinks that Milan will come back of the power of their own, grandness. It gets punctured a little bit when you find out that it's the same motivating forces as everywhere else.
I read out the name a moment ago. Can either of you remember the name of the American private equity group? They always have very forgettable names.
Redbird. Sorry.
You both did remember. Okay, I take it back. Redbird Capital is.
I think, is LeBron James involved in them? Maybe
okay.
that's why. You know, that's the Redbirds PR has worked on us too. Like
the only city to boast 2 European Cup winners.
Very good.
Until Manchester City win this league, or win this year, I suppose. But Milan, previous to that, the only city to have 2.
London only has 1. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah,
and Chelsea would have won it for the first time in 2012. That's crazy.
Yeah, Madrid came close.
Yeah, but Real Madrid kept beating Atletico in the final.
Yeah, that undercut the 2 teams from one city. We'll take a very short break. It's half-time, by the way, in the Connacht football final. Galway are 8 points clear, 2-7 to Sligo's 5 points. Sligo started very well, but Galway have kicked on very much so since, and they will have a strong enough wind in the second half as well. We'll continue the Sunday papers. Loads to get to with Conor McKeown and Gavin Cooney. Back in 1 moment.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.